Moving on then to celebrations.
President Stoltz, trustees, I ask that Mrs. Bridget Hazelbaker, our communications specialist, approach the podium with tonight's celebratory guests. Mrs. Hazelbaker, the floor is yours, ma'am.
Audience is full tonight. So ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce our coach, Billy Wright. He's going to come up here and explain who our students are that are here tonight. But we had a very successful wedding tournament, and we wanted to celebrate those students that were here as the MVPs and also on the all conference tournament team. Mr. Wright? Yeah.
All right, thank you, board, and for having us here to celebrate the 2022 Wedding Championship. I didn't prepare much, but I did bring the roster, so I made sure I didn't forget any of the players. They'd be mad at me, make me run sprints, but thank you for having us here today. We know your time is very, very valuable. You have a lot of busy work, so I'll be brief. But I would like the team members to please stand when they hear the name called. Number 0 is a junior, Javon Becerra. Number 2, junior, Zion Deloney. Number 3, sophomore, Mason Carpenter. Number 5, junior, Ryder Kate. Number 10, sophomore, Cedric Horton. Number 12, senior, Preston Hunter. Number 20, senior, Gunnar Kovach. Number 22, junior, Julian Smith. Number 23, senior, Kanan Turner. Number 24, junior, Gavin Haynes. Number 30, junior, Deontay Smith. Number 34, sophomore, Jaden Holland. Number 40, junior, Lanier Smithson. Number 42, senior, Sam Rising. Number 24, junior, Jaden Ship. And the coaching staff I have with me, assistant coach Ava Stewart, Lucas Durbin, Ronnie Dean, and we have our manager, Owen Peters. 2 claps for each other. That's how we do it. 2 claps and we go on to the next.
We're going to extend the applause more than 2 claps.
Yeah.
But congratulations.
Just a brief rundown. Obviously, the wedding tournament was one of the goals for our season. Obviously, the season's not over. We want to win the conference, but going into the Christmas break, we wanted to win the wedding, WTW. Now it's WTC, win the conference. So one step at a time, win the conference is a goal. We're 3-1 right now in the conference. Overall, we're 12-3. And the credits to the kids. We give them all the credit, all the glory, because they listen well and they work really, really hard. Just a quick recap. We beat Rushville 71-21 in the first game. The second game, Heritage 70-54. The next day, much anticipated against Seton Catholic 70-28. And then the championship game against a very, very tough Bloomington South team who had not lost by double digits in over 6 or 7 years. And we beat them 51-40. 3 of our players were selected to the all-tournament team, and I would like for them to come up and join me. Sophomore, Mason Carpenter. Sophomore, Cedric Horton. And junior, Ryder Kate were all 3 selected representation for Richmond Community Schools, Richmond High School on the all-tournament team. And then Ryder Kate was named the unanimous MVP. So let's give them a round of applause. And overall, I'll just conclude with, our mantra, our program is, hopefully you've heard it before, all in. All in, all in, all in. And for us, it means be the best person we can be. That's what we expect of these young men. No one's perfect, but they know right from wrong. Be the best student they can be. We would love for all of them to be top 10 in their class, but whatever their expectation is at home, we just simply say D's and F's are not acceptable. And then be the best basketball player you can be. Play hard, play smart, play together, all for one and one for all. So that's what all in means. When we say it each and every day, they understand what that means. Good student, good person, then a good basketball player, whether it's in the classroom, in the locker room, or in the community. So that's kind of who we are as a basketball program. The journey is just beginning. Winning the wedding tournament was a major building block in the bigger picture. And one day at a time, these guys make tremendous sacrifices representing Richmond Community Schools. So we're thankful to be here. And we do have a presentation, just a plaque for kids. I didn't want to give it to you, but kids wanted Dr. Wright to have a plaque to commemorate the championship. It says Richmond High School Holiday Tournament Bob Weddick Memorial Classic 2022 champions, Dr. Curtis Wright. Now, go ahead and get it.
If you don't mind being that the team unanimously decided to bring this plaque to me, if you all can just join us here, we'll take a quick photograph. And then
We also have a T-shirt
okay.
for Dr. Wright, as well as any board member, anyone in this room. We brought plenty. And if you would like to have a T-shirt, please see Bridget Hazelbaker at the conclusion of tonight's board meeting. They're in the office. So.
Gentlemen, it's been a while since I was amongst so many tall fellows. Right. Yes, if you all can just get in for the photograph. We tall guys will be in the back.
Can we adjust this way?
Yeah.
So.
Great. Yeah, I'll stand in the middle.
Yeah.
Right.
Hands in the pocket, hands inside.
Yeah.
Right, President Hardison. Thank you.
You want to game face or not?
I think, this is game face. Everyone's quickly. Game face. Mason, that's not a game face.
Questions are?
If indeed we could have the three turning award winners and captains. Gentlemen, don't get nervous. At this particular time, we typically do with all of our students, whether it be performing arts, whether it be extracurriculars, as well as student achievement. Our board indeed likes to pose questions to you. And
So we have Cedric's a sophomore, Ryder Kate is a junior, Mason Carpenter, sophomore.
Board, any questions for our student athletes?
It's just been a number of years, realistically, when we've had a team of the caliber that you have right now. And I know it's only early January right now, but I look and the majority of your team are underclassmen. So it's not just this year, but it's for the next couple of years. And I think it's, as you go and you sacrifice and practice every day and on the court, I think it's incumbent upon us to do whatever we can to get the community more involved so that Tiernan Center on a Friday night or a Saturday night is the place nobody wants to not be, that everybody wants to be there. And I think that's something that we owe to you for what you've done so far. Don't stop. But I think for overall, what we do as a community and as a school corporation, what you're doing on the court, we can reflect by supporting you more in the community and getting people out to make sure that you're honored every day on the court.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
It's been fun to watch, just not just the three of you, but everybody in there, especially the upperclassmen, the maturation process you guys have gone through over the past couple of years from becoming ball players you guys have become. It's been really, really fun to watch. So.
Thank you. If you don't mind if I can touch on that, just because I do want to, we talk about 15 strong.
Oh, absolutely.
And a lot of times, these three, a lot of the headlines or a lot of the writings, but it wouldn't happen if we didn't have the other 12 to practice against. And we talked about that today. A big part of the successes we've had were perfect attendance since the Connersville game. Like that game, right that week before, we had, no one had illness. We've been very fortunate in that. So show up and do the work. It's kind of been our mantra the past month, and we've had 15 strong. We couldn't do it without all of us.
Absolutely.
And so those were rather serious questions, and they'll come back with serious questions. But I have a unique question because Mr. Hogg, I like to think that I had a part in your success because I coached your mother at Test Intermediate School. It was then Test Middle School. And I believe she may be in the audience. And I will say, young Hogg, that although you indeed are talented, your mother still, I think right now, will give you a run for your money because she too was talented as an 8th grader, and that was one of the best teams I had ever coached. And we were undefeated. And multiple champion, nevertheless. Mr. Ryder Kate, your father used to pick me up for school when he first got his licensure back years and moons ago. That's when I was still skateboarding and walking, but your father was also an amazing golfer, an amazing guy, friend, and I think he too may still be able to compete with you in shooting. And then Mr. Carpenter, your father was a little younger than I in school, but I know that of the family, you all have nothing but the very best. And your younger brother, seeing how competitive he is, I think he'd be able to compete with you in shooting. And so I'm just challenging you all in a teasing way. But share with us what it meant to bring home the championship there on the court and represent the city and your families.
It was definitely like so great to see because we talked about it from like the start of the first game, and it was like one of the things that we wanted to do. And like it started coming upon us, and after the Connersville game, like we were all pretty upset about that. So like it wasn't like not an option at that point. We had to go, and it was super cool to see it happen.
I feel like we've been wanting to win it since last year. We lost that first game to Greensboro. Ever since then, it's just a guarantee. We just had to have it.
Yeah, I think it was definitely some motivation going into the wedding, but especially after the wedding, it kind of gave us a boost and gave us all confidence all as a team, and it all brought us together.
Can you all recall, or do you all know who Coach Griff was from the 90s? Have you seen some films and tapes? Coach Griff was one that was very animated on the sidelines. And we have a current coach that gets a little animated on the sidelines. Yes, in several sports. But of Coach Wright's animation on the sideline, what has it meant just to play for such a coaching staff, play for such teammates and the brotherhood that you all established?
I feel like it's a blessing, and we're all thankful to have this opportunity.
Yeah, so it definitely. People think that it's like anger and stuff, but we just look at it as like they just care.
Yeah, I think that they push us to the max, and they won't let us settle. So I think that's why we're making the run that we have so far, because they want us to do the best we can be as a team and individually.
Trustees, I apologize.
I mean, 30 years ago, your coach hoisted a different kind of trophy up in here. And so while we're ribbing about that a little bit, 30 years ago, jeez. But
I had a lot more hair back then.
not much.
And if you have not seen those games, just see me. I've got the DVD and the video. Okay.
It's great. I would do some work for Coach Griff every now and then, and he would pop those things out every March and watch every tournament game he had for. It was pretty cool. So, but
With the Cowboy boots.
lot of history here, guys. And you guys are part of it. So,
Just remain humble.
absolutely.
Remain humble and take every opportunity that you can to appreciate this time. But there is a bigger picture. But don't be self-confident in that you become boisterous. Just be humble, because there's nothing more than a humble winner to make more important that championship that you're going to bring us.
So Coach Wright, so earlier this school year, you visited our board and kind of laid before us your role in providing your role in providing all of the support systems and the services for our students, both to excel socially and academically. So just thinking back to that, now that you've settled in and you are. What does it mean to you to bring a city championship as well as provide quality leadership to students, to all students, not just the basketball team? So what's that?
Yeah, I
Talk about
definitely appreciate the support system that is in front of me, is behind me, and at home when I get home. I can't do it alone. I don't even think that, it's a we. It's greater than me. And at times I get the blame, I get the glory, I understand that, but, just being back home and looking at these kids in the basketball piece, that's just passion, love, just like when I was a teacher. Many people don't realize I was a classroom teacher for 12 years. I went to college and now I'm back. So investing in my own community, investing in my own city, my own school is just that much more special. The icing on the cake is seeing these young men achieve their goals individually and collectively, and seeing the students in the hallway come up to me and not know me as coach, right? Know me as William, like my IB, or Mr. Wright. You know, that's rewarding in itself too, because I'm having an impact in other areas, specifically the mentoring piece as well. So it's a balancing act, but I'm glad to be doing it for all kids, with the help of my staff and the administration at the high school.
No, as we get to read the board updates, yeah, it's just amazing all of the stuff that you're infiltrating Richmond. That's the word that comes to mind, is that infiltration of, okay, who needs support, where do you need it, and just you've got your fingers all over Richmond. That's great. So thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, coach. Thank you, program, and definitely continue to do what it is you do. We're 100% behind you, like we are for everyone. Thank you.
Next, we have our consent items. Oh, no, there's public commentary. Sorry. Anyone? We have two. Two? Okay. Okay, in regards to public commentary, the Board of School Trustees recognizes the value of public comment on educational issues and the importance of allowing members of the public to express themselves on corporate matters, and the board wants to ensure that the public feels welcome and that the concerns are answered in a timely and efficient manner. The maximum time currently that we have in place for individual speakers is 5 minutes per person. And with two, we will allot that 5 minutes. The board expects personal decorum and factual information from the speaker. The president reserves the right to interrupt the speaker when the statement is too lengthy, personally directed, abusive, and obscene, or if it interferes with the orderly conduct of the meeting. Comments recognizing the work of staff and students are always welcome. However, critical remarks concerning specific personnel or students are to be made through the complaint process available in policy 8130. School board members do not respond to public comments during the meeting. The public participant will receive a personal follow-up email from the board president within a week. Thank you.
Okay, Emily Christian.
I'm here thinking about preparedness for another school year. It feels like we've had a really long semester already from the high school standpoint, but I'll say starting off the semester with a flooded building wasn't really the direction we were planning to go, but I will admit that it's going a lot better than I ever expected, and I wasn't expecting Ray to be here today, but Ray will be. If there is ever a zombie apocalypse, I want her on my side because she is amazing. And so the teachers, the students, everybody's pulled together. Holy cow, the custodians and the construction workers, I do not want to be them, but they are also amazing. I'm coming because when we got the announcement that we were having a not e-learning day today for snow days, I don't know if your phones blew up too, but every mom that I know started contacting me. Did you see what they did? They're going to add another day on. And I said, well, we kind of put ourselves up against a wall because we added in all of the potential e-learning days that we could have. So we're kind of in a corner. This is what we had to do. So I'm here, frequent hater of e-learning. And I just want to say before the calendar comes out, whenever that happens to be for next year, I would like for it to be without the built-in e-learning days so that we don't back ourselves into a corner again, so that we can use all of the days of in-person learning with our teachers, with our students. We know that the best learning takes place in person. You call them e-learning, I call them no learning. You can go with whatever you want to go with. But I just want to encourage thinking ahead, thinking about emergencies that are going to happen. Hopefully not another flooded building, but there will be emergencies that are going to happen. Let's save those e-learning days so that we don't back ourselves into another corner. Thank you.
Steve Jones.
Most honorable board. Steve Jones, principal at Charles Elementary School, the pride of Richmond. Last night we had our spelling bee, and I'm glad the basketball team left because a young lady won from Fairview last night. Well, spelling bee season's a little shorter, but she's undefeated. Those guys are not. So, that's right there. But we had last night, and so Sophia Garcia, and I will talk to Bridget about getting the. We had first, second, and then we had a tie for third. And our two judges that were here, I thought that tie for third was going to go on all night. I was ready to start looking for a quarter to just let us flip because they were going back and forth, and it's like, holy smokes. And some of the words were a little bit much for me as well. So, but no, I want to put a couple thank yous out. Cynthia Kirk was our other judge. Mayor Snow showed up as our announcer. Susan Clark, Secretary at Charles. I mean, she had everything organized. I mean, it was all set to go. She's amazing. Civic hall workers were incredible. And then I want to thank Kristen and Nicole as they showed up and were our judges last night, and they neither one of them wavered. They're like, yeah, I can do it. And then I think Kristen said, what day is it? I need to check that first. She's like, but I'll do it. I'll do it anyway. So I just want to drop that off with you two. And thank you so much for giving up your time last night. And that's how you guys are doing a great job. So, any questions from the board about anything?
What was the winning word?
And can you spell it without a card?
Oh, my God. Last night, like I said, I kid you not, and the two ladies can tell you that third place, I think it went on, I think they went through 16 words. So at that point, I was like, holy smokes. And I know at one point, and I don't remember what the word was, but I thought we had a winner. I was like, yes! And then I saw all the red cards go up. I go, oh, I didn't know how to spell that. So, it was, but yeah, I couldn't even, I had to look back because it's all on paper, but yeah, like I said, we'll set up where they.
Words, right?
What's that?
160 words total? Or?
Yeah, I think we're at 167 by the time we got done last night. So it was like 13 rounds, 16 rounds, something like that. So, I mean, the kids were troopers, and it was a good time we had. We had a pretty good audience as well, so it's always good to see the parents, grandparents, friends, all combined. So, but that's all. I just want to say thank you, and it was a wonderful event. So, have a good evening. Any other questions? Good? All right. Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, good. So moving on to consent items, do we have a motion to approve consent items?
Madam President,
Oh, I'm sorry. I come before you all to seek approval for consent items 4.01 through 4.06 as approved.
Madam President, I would make a motion that we approve 4.01 through 4.06 with the addendums at our desk.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion by Mr. Walton, a second by Mr. Stevens. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, we will now vote. Aye for passing. All in favor?
Aye.
And nay for voting against? Any? All right, the motion passes. We then have action items, 5.01 donations.
President Stoltz, trustees, I ask that Mrs. Karen Scalf, our Chief Financial Officer, join us in conversation for action items 5.01 through 5.03 as presented. Mrs. Scalf.
Good evening. Tonight before you are donations totaling $6,556.70. We would like to thank the following donors for their contributions to our programs this month. The Donors Choose program donated to Hibbard in Mr. Schroyer's classroom. The Rob Quigg Fund Inc. and Richmond Baking Company all donated to RHS Athletics in the amount of $1,000. William and Ruth Carter donated to the RHS Our Shelves program, $500. Kevin Ahouse and Ahouse Tool and Engineering donated to the girls basketball team, as well as Aaron Ryan. They both donated cumulatively $750. Michael and Millicent Emery donated to the Proudly Presenting Series. Attendees of the Winter Choir Concert donated to Mr. Anthony Johnson's Intermediate Spring Musical Program, which will be Beauty and the Beast Junior. You will see more information coming on that throughout the month. David W. Dennis School donated to the RHS Business Professionals of America program at the high school. Amy Hubble donated to the RHS swim team. The Crystal Dreams Foundation and Angela Coffey donated to the RHS boys and girls basketball teams. Purdue Polytechnic donated to the Academic Competition Fund at Richmond High School. And Dr. and Mrs. Gary Brown donated to RHS girls basketball. So tonight it is my recommendation that we approve the donations as presented.
So moved.
All right, thank you, Mr. Zaleski.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Mr. Zaleski and a second by Mrs. Brunton. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Okay, moving on to 5.02, budget appropriation transfers.
Okay, so before you are the budget appropriation transfers for 2022. There were transfers in the education fund, the operations fund, and the debt service fund. These are not transfers of cash. They are simply appropriation transfers from one programmatic area to another programmatic area. And they all are a part of the total appropriated budget. So this is not actually cash transacted, it is simply appropriations to cover the need in areas that may not have been appropriated in the same amount as needed throughout the year. This is extremely common. I will let you know that we will see even greater numbers of transfers this year, as the DOE has changed all of the accounting structures for salaries and benefits, and they did not do so until November. So all of the approved budgets from the DLGF do not match the accounts required starting January 1. So these are strictly, again, appropriation transfers. They are annual and they are routine. And so tonight before you are the recommendations for the 2022 budget appropriation transfers.
All right, thank you. Do we have a motion to approve the budget appropriation transfers?
I move that we approve action item 5.02 and 5.03.
Okay.
Second.
So we have
Just
5.02.
okay.
Yeah.
5.03 is going to be a different.
I will alter my just 5.02.
just 5.0?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so we have a motion by Mrs. Brunton, a second by Mr. Stevens. All right. Do we have any questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Thank you. Now moving on to 5.03.
Okay, so this is the recurring transfer from the education fund to the operations fund. We do have to pass this resolution on an annual basis. This is for the maximum amount allowable for transfers between the education fund to the operations fund allowable by statute. What is coming around is the actual transfers for 2022, so that you can kind of compare notes. We do estimate this transfer high in the event that we grow students, state budgets change, or changes to the basic grant or other factors that may not be known right now occur. This resolution is identical to the 2022 resolution, so nothing has changed. What I will tell you is transfers are based on an actual expenditure amount and are not based on just the 15% rule. So you will see that in that spreadsheet that I sent around. We transferred just over 14% this year, so we do base that on actual figures of what is allowable, and we do not take excess. So though it's allowable, we choose not to do that here at this time. So it is my recommendation that we approve the recurring transfers from education to operations fund. Just a note for new board members, you do receive in consent agendas each business meeting the actual amount transferred per month. So you are always kept up come with that spreadsheet. That just happens to be what I use for auditing and for accounting purposes. If the DOE ever calls into question our calculations, that is what we provide. So it just has that additional documentation to it. And then budget histories of all of the financials can be run to coincide. So.
Thank you, Mrs. Scow. Do we have a motion to approve action item 5.03?
I move we approve action item 5.03.
Okay.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Mrs. Brunton, a second by Mr. Stevens. Do we have any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Okay, moving on to 5.04. That's right.
President Stolz, trustees, I return to you all with the current action item that were previously discussed at our last board meeting 2 weeks ago. We have before us a recommendation from myself, our cabinet team, along with our staff as well, to transition from one board meeting, transition from 2 board meetings to 1, with the option to add a work session in the absence of the board meeting that would be transitioned away from. So I come back before you all with the same recommendation. I know that the last time we had conversation, it was discussed that we would have an opportunity to sit and extend conversation through our executive committee, which we have. I know that you all received documentation and notations as to the options that are presented with a work session. And I again come back before you with the same recommendation that we transition from 2 scheduled board meetings per month to 1 scheduled board meeting per month, with the option of the work session filling in the absence of the second board meeting. The work session would fall on the 2nd Wednesday of each month, with the board meeting scheduled to be conducted on the 4th Wednesday of each month.
I'm not pulling up the calendar. I can't get the calendar pulled up right now. What is the, I guess we need to have a motion first, and then we'll talk. Think about that. Good.
All right,
Maybe there's a little bit.
let's go ahead and, are you finished, Dr. Wright?
Yes,
With
yes,
your-
ma'am.
Okay, so do we have a motion to approve the board meeting dates?
I move to approve the board meeting dates, action item 5.04.
Got a-
Second.
So a motion is made by Brunton, Mrs. Brunton, and then a second by Mr. Zaleski. So questions or comments?
Yeah, I'm trying to pull up the calendar. August 9th, that Wednesday, is that the first day of school?
For this upcoming fall, and that's
Yeah.
something that indeed will come before the board as we are putting the finishing touches on the 23-24 calendar. August 9th is a potential date, and if that is indeed the date.
So my only thing, we did it this year where we had a board meeting that night.
Yeah,
I know that's
first
a
day.
really long day
Mhm.
for everybody.
Mhm.
So in November, the week of Thanksgiving, we moved that to Monday. So my only question would be, do we want to move that to a Monday, a couple days before school? That way it's not as long of a day for our administrators that are gonna be here.
I guess it depends on whether those are open houses before school starts,
True.
because that, I know we like to attend
Right.
those, I know John's attending quite a few too, just so we're
I'm
available to
just
attend
throwing
those.
out
Yeah.
ideas here, so.
And what is our option as far as flexibility on these dates? Should we decide we want to move one? Isn't that?
As always, as a board of school trustees, you all can reschedule and or call for emergency board meetings when necessary. And I know that last year there was, I believe, on 1 or 2 occasions where we had to reschedule a board meeting, and we also had a few emergency meetings last year. And so that is definitely,
And this is one of the work sessions. August 9th is the work session, so it
so
could
it's
be
not a board
one.
meeting, it's a work
Right,
session.
it's a
Yeah,
work
that's right.
session.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other question I had is, so are these, I mean, obviously they're all empty slots right now. I mean, is the intent to use all of these, or do we think we'll use 5 work sessions? I mean, what's the intent? I mean, obviously we need to keep these dates available, but are we looking to fill every work session? Are we looking to use them as needed?
That's a great question, Mr. Webb, and I think that's something that, indeed, as a Board of Trustees, as a Board of Governance, we I think, should have that open dialogue. I do know that of what was found in the board update, as well as what's there in board docs, the work session topics would indeed be chosen by the executive committee, as well as topics that I would recommend and suggest to you all as Board of Governance. These work sessions indeed could or could not be streamed live and or tape delay with record. Public commentary is something that within this session we could indeed offer. The meetings would have a max time limit of an hour and a half, and then to your point and to your question, agenda items could fill each date that's being presented, and or we could, you all definitely, as a Board of Governance, I should say we all have an opportunity to determine whether or not we call them when needed. I know we're excited as a cabinet and as central office leaders to present to you all more in-depth coverage or conversation and education and information pertaining to our respective departments. And so, to answer your question, I think that if you all chose to approve the calendar before you last board meeting that simply stated we would meet once per month, that's definitely something that indeed you all could do. And if we found it necessary to have a work session, we can do that. Or if we found it necessary to have an emergency meeting, as we're conducting now, we can do that as well. So you all have several options that you can vote on.
I mean, I think it makes sense to hold the dates, but I also would like to be I think part of the idea was to streamline the system, and I don't want to create topics for meetings, would be my suggestion. So if we have something ready to go February 8th, it's good to go, but if we're not quite ready, then do we, would that meeting be postponed? And would the process be, I guess, the Tuesday before that would be the no-go, no-go date would be the agenda meeting, I believe. So that's all. Just I as much for you guys as for us, you don't need to come an extra Wednesday if we're just going to talk about, what our mascot should be or something. So.
I definitely understand where you're coming from, and I think that, again, I'd love to hear from our Board of Governance with regard to Mr. Weber's statements. I know that, as I mentioned, as a cabinet, we indeed look forward to presenting only to you all, but also to the public during those sessions. But at the same time, going back to the initial recommendation, we indeed want to also make sure we're having the opportunity to continue to thoroughly maximize.
There's plenty to talk about.
Yes, and we do indeed, I know, provide you all with information and background knowledge that others are not for.
Mr. Stevens, you
As I stated at the last board meeting, and I've spoken with a couple of administrators and others since then, I still like the idea of scheduling 2 meetings a month with the caveat that one of those meetings is subject not to be held. If it's necessary, if there is a necessity for a work session so we can deal with a specific topic that is already on the public calendar. We can always withdraw, and say no, but I like the thought. I don't want to create something for the superintendent or the administration that says we must have a work session, for a topic, but it's all something that would already be on a calendar. in case we did decide to have one. I don't want to put any more burden on the administration, the cabinet, or anything else, but that's just my thought.
I would agree with Aaron. I feel like we have a lot of things to discuss, and part of, the 2 board meetings a month now, we do have those work sessions where we have presentations, and those to me now shift to
Working groups?
Yes. So I agree. I mean, and I think I also like the idea, having talked to people also, that, there's public commentary at these work sessions at the beginning and at the end, so that we still want, we want the public to attend, and we want them to be part of this, and we want to be able to communicate what's happening with RCS, and I think that's needed with one board meeting and one work session. But I also think, I know we're kind of reconfiguring in a way, because we've normally had the work sessions in the board meetings, but to me, I still see it as kind of 2 meetings a month. I don't want to fill a spot if we don't have anything to discuss, but I feel like there's a lot to discuss, and that we will need those days.
And indeed, you all will have that autonomy, and as a governance, we'll have that autonomy to cancel the work session if necessary. I know that,
And again, it's for a work session. It's not something that necessarily every one of your cabinet members have to be present. Okay, if it's pertaining to their specific responsibilities, that's one thing. But I mean, if we were going to have a work session tonight and it's going to deal with, the colors of the rainbow, I don't know, then we get the rainbow administrator to be here. No one else has to be here. They can be with their family or do whatever they have to. Because I think Ms. Oncini stated eloquently the last time how much time, after tonight, when the gavel is hit, your cabinet has to start preparing for the next meeting, okay? So I don't want to create any more responsibilities for them, but I just think it would be prudent for us to have those dates advertised. So if needed, we have something specific, not created, but something specific that we as a board need to discuss, lasting no more than an hour and 15 minutes or so. Jump in, get it, invite the public, let them, have their comments and be done with it. Again, I think Mr. Zaleski spoke to it at the last meeting in regards to transparency and everything else, and not putting the public, putting them aside. So again, that's my thought.
And I personally like that it seems like this work session format will provide a little more transparency, a little more interaction with the public, as far as having that commentary at the end, kind of for us to be able to address some things interactively, a little more so. Again, legally. So.
And I'd like to see us stay with the 2 meetings as advertised, but keep in mind if there's certain projects happening at a certain school. I think Ms. Sonsini brought up bringing the meetings to the schools. And I think that makes a lot of sense.
There were a couple threads on social media I saw. I think they were confused by the way we were attending that, by actually, trying to get more of the school like if we go to STAR, trying to get STAR's administration involved with it. We're not really doing it. We're just trying to that second board meeting to be able to locate it throughout the community, to give people opportunities that may not normally come to board meetings. So if we've got something going on in STAR, to Mr. Zaleski's point, we have that meeting in that area, and hopefully we'll get more of the community to come in and participate in that meeting. So.
Many of those families, Brad, are more subject to coming to their home school in their neighborhood where they can walk to or take a short drive to, because they're in that building and familiar with the staff and everything, even though the staff may not be there, but that's their home turf, so to speak, their home court. And if we held it there, it may be, that thing that entices individuals who would not normally feel compelled to come to this structure, but they'll feel more at ease to go to Fairview, Star, Charles, wherever it may be.
And we weren't trying to put more stress on the individual schools by doing that.
Not at all.
Not at all, so.
And I think it speaks to what we all have had conversation about in previous conversations as far as going to our community, meeting them exactly where they are, literally. And I know that as we had talked last year about traveling amongst the corporation with our board meetings to also be able to highlight the amazing things going on in each particular neighborhood at each particular school. And to the point, yes, no, there will not be any burden placed on that school administration. We're just utilizing that space to, if indeed that's the route that we go with these work sessions.
Oh, good.
No, you go ahead.
I mean, I think the calendar as presented is a fair compromise, rather than having the two meetings like we've always had scheduled. I think it separates out a work session clearly. I think the idea that if it's not necessary, it might be struck from the calendar. And then I'll just advocate, I think this room was designed for our board meetings. I think they belong here, the public comes here. If we want to have other activities at schools, that's fine, but I think, we had some real, in the last year, some real concerns with people coming and how we address the public. And I think just from a safety and logistics standpoint, I prefer that this is the primary location. And so if we do some traveling, I'd like that to be very well thought out and make sure we cover all our bases. So thank you.
I wanted to add that I had several people since our last board meeting say, oh, you're moving to one board meeting a month. And I think that we need to reiterate to the public that we will still have 2 scheduled meetings a month, and we're just kind of reorganizing them. So one is kind of a work session and one's a business meeting, but there will still be on the calendar. So we're not necessarily just striking out one and it's going to be less information to the public. We still have 2 scheduled meetings a month.
And indeed, to your point, Mrs. Brun, I think that the format of the work session will allow us to share even that much more accurate, fact-based information to our community that indeed should provide that transparency that we all aspire to afford the community. And if indeed, as I said, it play out as we are anticipating, I think it's going to be an opportune time for us to really engage with one another, but also with our community and our public.
I have a question. On the consent items, for like at a business meeting, would we have a vote for consent items? I mean, is that a possibility? Or because if not, you'd go month to month without having some of those that are needed on a daily basis to help HR out.
And within the work session, and I know that Attorney Cross would be able to weigh in if I incorrectly state this, but within the work sessions themselves, consent and action items do not have to and typically are not necessarily a part of the work session. Could be, indeed, if that's something that is decided upon. But to your point, Trustee Mops, indeed, the month-long time, as far as especially with HR and also with our business department and facilities, I think we would definitely prepare preemptively to see to it that dates are in alignment and we're able to, if, for example, last year we called upon 2 emergency meetings at a particular time to press forward with a particular matter, and that was something that we came together and actually was some of our shorter meetings last year. And that's always an option, but hopefully, and our goal is to make sure that each month we are proactively placing all the schedules, contracts, the whole right.
Those consent items took 2 minutes to get.
Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir. And it is, but to Trustee Mop's point, it is something that is also an option within the work session
and
that we could add.
And in the fact that we have a certain amount of time frame in which to advertise to the public what the topic is going to be, on this scheduled meeting, we can always, within that time frame, say there will be some consent items that we must act upon during that meeting.
I'm glad you referenced that, Trustee Stevens, because indeed during that work session, you all will be afforded an opportunity to, if necessary, introduce such items and or such matters, as long as it receives the majority vote to move in that. But it has to clearly be stated. So, for example, if we were in a work session and a consent item came up that we needed to truly pass through, or even an action item, just during that meeting, it would have to be clearly stated and clarified.
Well, I would feel that if there was an action item or a consent item that had to be added to or had to be advertised as part of the agenda, it would come prior to, because it probably would not be relevant to the work session topic. So it's something that could be taken care of very quickly at the beginning of the work session meeting.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, to Mr. Mops's point, we talked about it a little bit in exec session or exec committee. And I personally, I think it's gonna be more often than not. There'll be a couple of consent items on there. Just, I mean, you get the addendums to HR and everything all the time. So, but again, to his point, it's gonna take a minute and a half, 2 minutes to get through it.
All right. Any further discussion?
I appreciate the conversation and the dialogue we've had on this topic. Yes.
Okay, we have a motion by Mrs. Brunton, a second by Mr. Zaleski. And all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Motion passes. All right, so action item 5.05, we have the curriculum guide for the high school, the 2023-24 year.
President Stoltz, trustees, I ask that Mrs. Don Sansini, our assistant superintendent, join us in the conversation for action item 5.05. Mrs. Sansini.
Thank you, Dr. Wright. Good evening, board members. It is recommended that the Board of School Trustees approves the Richmond High School Curriculum Guide as presented for the 2023-2024 school year. In your board docs, you had two documents. One was the curriculum guide, and the other was an overview of the changes to any courses, descriptions, removals, and also the adjustments to the valedictorian.
All right, do we have a motion to approve action item 5.05?
So moved.
All right, first, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any questions or comments?
I assume the valedictorian is going to be probably the most controversial part of that. How does this align with other school systems?
I'm not sure exactly how it aligns to other school systems, but I will, Ms. Wolfe is in the audience this evening, and so she came to help kind of explain the thought process behind developing this revision. So Ms. Wolfe, if you don't mind coming forward.
Good evening. Good evening. To answer that question it's all over the board. As far as valedictorians, a lot of schools now have gone away from valedictorians. So again, it's all over the board on how schools recognize their high academic students. Some of them do the college model with the summa cum laude and those types of things. Others do stay with the traditional valedictorian, while others do what we are attempting to do to recognize more students and to take away. There is a lot of competition among that top layer of our academic students. And so as to kind of to help them relax, because they're always, they're taking 5 or 6 AP classes or dual credit classes and, just really pushing themselves to the point of frustration and exhaustion. So we felt like this was a good, and of course we did it several years ago. And in that interim, we have added a lot of AP courses. We've just added a lot of dual credit classes where our students now at Richmond High School can get the Indiana College Core. We have a partnership with IU East, and our students that get 30 dual credit courses will have an IU transcript that will go to any Indiana college. So they start out in college with 30 credits. So a lot of them are sophomores when they come into college. So again, I don't have a clear answer for that. I can just tell you all the different kinds of ways that high schools honor their top academic students.
So, like, look at the last couple classes, we've had
Double digits.
double-digit numbers. What does that look like under the proposed new proposal?
What we try and do is and this is what we did when we initially changed it, what GPA are we going to put? And it's funny because we said 4.5 and we're going, oh my gosh, what if nobody gets that? And last year we had 14. So that's a tribute, I think, to not only our teachers, but to also the type of students that we have that want to achieve and want to take those really difficult courses. So again, we looked at it, we took some sample students, and again, if they don't make that 4.6, we take the student that then is closest to the 4.6.
What about in comparison to schools that just have one valedictorian? I mean, are there, as far as schools across the area, is that common or?
What I usually do, I go to our conference, 10 schools in the North Central Conference. We pose questions to each other all the time. The other is just having principal, friends that you can call up. And there's another group of principals. I'm a close friend with the Delta principal. He was on the IHSAA board with me. So he includes me in a lot of surveys that they're doing also. So that's where I get most of my information.
I guess it's interesting having children gone through this math problem is what I call it. My daughter would not have been able to get to a 4.6. And I know the proliferation of weighted grades, we've added a lot more weighted classes.
Right.
And so I think that's where that changed. But I would strongly advocate for a valedictorian salutatorian model. I think it becomes, when you talk about pressure, it's like, oh, do I do something that I'd like to do, or do I take another AP class? Well, if you're going for that, you take another AP. And right. I think if we went with a 1 and 2, like I know, and I'll apologize, I'm more familiar with Ohio schools and that, or I saw a family over there, and I think that model, especially with the way the number of offerings we have, it's just through the roof. 14 valedictorians last year was a lot of kids. Mm-hmm. And I think before we went to the weighted grades, we were getting a lot of kids. Like when we were at 4.0, we had a lot 4.0 kids.
Right. Yeah.
So I think that was part of the change. But I think a valedictorian salutatorian model, 1 and 2, I think it's fair. I think it really represents those top tier kids. Mm-hmm. And I guess that's what I would advocate for personally, understanding that that's just my
right, and I appreciate that. I absolutely appreciate any kind of input. One of the other things, and I just thought about this, was the fact that we have students that are very interested in music or art. And as you just said, if I'm looking at valedictorian, I may not take that music class, or I may not take that art class. And we really want our students to be well-rounded, mm-hmm. So that's another point that we discussed as we talked about all of this.
Ray,
mm-hmm.
Is there any correlation between the valedictorian, salutatorian, and who speaks at commencement? Is that a separate issue? So you basically rehearse, or you take applicants?
Our speakers at graduation actually audition. All right. We don't make anyone do a speech. We let them you know, hey, I'm really passionate about speaking, and a lot of those seniors are. And so our speech teacher, our ACP dual credit speech teacher, the kids do a speech and then they go in and they basically try out.
This will be, and just to confirm, this valedictorian policy would be starting with the current 8th graders, right? The class of
Correct.
2027.
Yes, we felt like that should be, you know, we don't wanna mess any the 9, 10, 11 and 11th graders right now. So it will be the incoming class of new 9th graders that this will affect.
I guess I'll speak up also again that, I mean, I agree with John. I mean, I love seeing the changes in the new classes, but I don't agree with this portion of it. And the fact that also I know that the students that are in that large group, they know where they're ranked also.
Mhm.
So even though we say 14 won this, they know. So that competition to me is still there. And although I want to celebrate, I mean, this is fantastic. We have so many students. To me, I feel like there should be a number 1 and a number 2 clearly established. So this portion I'm not comfortable voting toward, but the rest I am.
Okay. And again, obviously we are very willing to look at anything, you know, and bring that back if that is, you know, something that you would like for us to do.
I mean, I think we do enough. We have honors and awards, National Honor Society. I think that upper achieving class, I mean, there are many ways that they are rewarded. It seems to me, I mean, not that I want to take a valedictorian away from somebody that has a 4.6 weighted average. I mean, they're obviously taking a ton of hard classes, but I just, I think the point is, if I'm you know, maybe I wouldn't take 4 AP classes, maybe I'd take 3, and I would take band, or I would take art. I think it just makes that equation a little, I think it opened, I mean, I was a guy that took a lot of VOTEC in high school, but I wasn't near a valedictorian. And so, but those are the classes that I think about and that I had more experiential in that I really appreciate later in life. So it's tough.
So Ray, this won't come to us as a surprise to you because we talked about this, but I'm also of the opinion that I prefer the valedictorian, salutatorian model. And one of the things that you'd said that is just that they push themselves to the point of frustration and exhaustion. And I understand what you're saying, but that's something that we applaud on the basketball court. That's something we applaud in an athletic environment. And so if these kids that are academically gifted don't have that room to compete in that way, I feel like that we're doing them a disservice, I guess, is my perspective. I feel like we should be able to say, you're first, you're second, you know, you earned that, because it is frustrating and exhausting, and there's just a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that are involved, you know, and so I feel like we are taking that away from them if we don't have the first and the second, and giving them that opportunity to shine in the academic realm. So my personal preference, you know, again, aligning with the first and second. So I don't know what the other board members feel, if that's something that is.
I think the sports metaphor is probably not. That's for 3 months. I mean, these kids are going 4 years.
So they're
and they're
more
putting a lot of pressure on themselves for 4 years, so to me, I mean, that, and you know, I understand that too. I've been through it. So, but they really work hard for 4 years, and they don't sleep at night, and so anyway.
President Stoltz and trustees, I'm curious to know, because what I hear just, I love the dialogue and conversation. What I hear, it sounds unanimous. You all are for the curriculum guide with the exclusion of the valedictorian policy as presented. Is it possible to vote on the curriculum guide? We can extract the valedictorian and bring the valedictorian conversation to our next educational working group meeting. and then have more
Sure.
time to talk. And at that point, Mrs. Whoopi can also bring back maybe ideas that can be formulated and created once you.
What I'm hearing is that the preference is a valedictorian, salutatorian type model. I would love to survey our upper level academic students and just see what they think. You know, yes.
May I make a suggestion? Instead of them, go to our 8th graders, those top 5% in our 8th grade who, if this is passed, are going to be the ones directly affected by it. Because it may immediately change some of the course selections that they make over the next 4 years. But this is just my opinion, to speak with that 5% of the upper tier of our 8th graders who are going to be affected. You know, the ones who are juniors and seniors right now, it's not going to have a bearing on them in reality. But that would be my suggestion.
I was thinking that the 9, 10, 11, and 12th graders right now would have an opinion on whether or not they see the fairness and if you
Okay, they've
call
lived
it
it.
fair. You know, and I agree, 8th graders, that's a great idea too. You know, so maybe we do 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 and just see how do they feel about this.
Thank you, that got the mud out of my mind.
Well, one thing I remember distinctly from high school, and going there right in front of the main office when all the pictures were in the cases, and everybody knew that class rank. And I mean, I would rarely visited that case with my own picture, but I remember you kind of just knew, and you knew where people were at, you knew where they felt, and I mean, that's just, I mean, not to do the sports stuff, but that's, you know, that's where your standings are. You see it, and you know what you got to do to move up or down, and so I miss that. But I mean, aren't they all alphabetical now? I mean,
They're back to.
Are they back into order? Okay.
No, the cases are in rank order.
Okay. Okay. They're for a while. They were,
Yes,
okay,
for
okay.
a while we had them
Thank you,
alphabetical.
thank
And again, there is a lot of, there's articles and research on everything. And there is on the valedictorian, you know, the mental health, the issues that it has caused in some schools across the country. So again, we are always trying to look at current research. What are the best ways that we can serve our students? All right. And so we went to the alphabetical, and then I believe you guys had a discussion about that, and we flipped that back to the rank order. So all the classes now are in rank order in Honors Hall.
Ms. Whoopi, the only thing I would add to, and I love the suggestion of surveying students, and I know it was echoed by several trustees, but I would also ask that that survey also include the surveying of their parents and also of our community, just to provide them with an opportunity to also weigh in on the subject. And we'll definitely work together. We'll work together on
not to wrap things up, but you know, like even the class rank we've talked a fair bit about. I mean, some colleges it's not important, but many colleges it's very important what that rank is, and so it's to go one way, yes or no. It's hard. And then I'll just share. My niece went to school in Louisville, Kentucky, and there were 98 valedictorians because they were a 4.0 school. She was not one because she had 1 A-. And you know, so it's.
Do you know a lot of high schools don't do rank? Carmel High School does not do class rank.
But you know, but then
which
if
I found
you go to a
interesting,
college,
you know.
that's important.
Yeah.
I don't know what that
like
means.
I said, everybody
So-
everybody in the country's all over the place on this.
We've not
Some
given you
do
an
class
easy
rank,
task.
some don't do class rank. We do all kinds of things to honor those top academic students. So
I think I mean, I think the school does a really. I mean, the honors and awards ceremony is spectacular.
Yeah.
So.
And we'll support Ms. Whoopi and her administrative team with such survey, as well as just fleshing out this conversation that much more, and coming to the work group, meeting, in February to, continue to have conversations
Sure.
and bring it back at a later date.
Absolutely,
Thank you, and I did have one more comment. I love the PE officiating.
I know, I do
course.
too. I do too.
What a novel idea.
Yes,
So,
well, the IHSAA came up with that.
Yeah.
And it was a new offering that they had talked about last spring, and we just said, hey, why not? You
no,
know,
it's
let's
and
do that.
for 10th, 11th, and 12th graders. So
Correct.
it's not just until you're on your way out. It's
Right.
like, hey,
Right.
now you can help officiate.
Well,
So
and what
there's
our hope is that then we can have more youth officials within the city.
Yeah.
For whether it's a soccer league, basketball, football, you know.
Partnering with YMCA, that type of thing.
Yeah, it's not,
Yes.
it's not necessarily a new concept,
No, it's
realistically.
no. Well,
Troy Ingram, when I was in school, Troy had, it was
That's
the
right.
club.
Yes.
He had the sports officiating
Uh-huh.
club, and
That's
it went
right.
away unfortunately. But I think this would be an ideal time for something like that, because as the most recent news is out, IHSA is down in referees all across the board right now, so.
Across the country.
Yes.
And that's a sad, state of affairs, but I think this course indeed, and if indeed we can drum up the interest, at the middle school level, as to what students can look forward to.
Right.
And within our feeder programs, the athletic feeder programs, give, opportunities, of folks, for their rec leagues and some of the intramural type leagues that exist, because I know you being a former IHSAA board member, you can definitely speak to it. I know we have, our RHS athletic director with us as well. I want to ask that he come up, but I know that you can speak to the challenges that officials also
Correct,
have when
yes.
it comes to safety and security,
Yeah.
and how so many of them, like you said, across the country have just been driven away from participating or serving.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
so
yes.
This is great. Well, thank you, Ms. Wilkie.
I'm gonna do it again.
So we
Thank
need
you. Any other
at least
questions
at the very
I can
minimum to
answer?
get the classes approved so counselors can move forward in.
Okay, yes, that would be great.
Okay, so our current motion on, before us is, made by Mr. Walton.
Yeah, I would like to modify that and say I would like to make a motion that we approve 5.05, the 2023-24 high school curriculum guide minus the valedictorian section.
And do we have a second?
Second.
Mr.
Aaron had already seconded.
Mr.
She had
Stevens had
seconded.
seconded. Are you good with
Go ahead.
seconding that?
You're good? I'll second. I'll second.
Mr. Stevens has a second. Okay. Any more questions or comments? Other than thank you very much for your work.
Thank you very much, thank you.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. All right, so moving on to 5.06, Dr. Wright.
President Stoltz, trustees, I ask that Mrs. Jamie Bolzer, our Human Resource Director, join us in conversation for action item 5.06. Mrs. Bolzer, the floor is yours, ma'am.
Thank you. I'm trying to get it pulled back up. I was looking at a report with some of the relevancy of what we were discussing. Thank you, Dr. Wright. In order to meet the increased needs in our communications, promotional, and advertising effectiveness, the job description for the communications coordinator has been expanded. The expansion of essential duties and responsibilities include the development and maintenance of an effective marketing plan. In addition, the position will be responsible for overseeing promotion, advertising campaigns, and brand awareness. The position will be modified from communications coordinator to communications and marketing coordinator. The position will move to an exempt position under contractual classified employees on the non-certified salary schedule. The benefit package the benefit package 1 was amended to reflect the change in the name of the position and remove non-exempt as an employee type, since all eligible employees in this package will now be exempt employees. You have the schedule as far as the changes that are shown, and it is the recommendation is that the Board of School Trustees approve the amendments to the non-certified salary schedule and benefit package 1 as presented, effective January 27th, 2023, which is the beginning of the next pay period.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve action item 5.06?
I'll make the motion.
Second?
I'll second.
Any questions or comments?
I do. It looks like there's about a 15 to 20% increase in the salary. Has there been overtime in that position in the past year that moving it to exempt? And with that increase, is there contractual service that we were paying for that's now going to be rolled into that job? How exactly what are we adding to that job from what it was previous?
One of the things that we indeed have come to understand, and many school corporations across the country and definitely within our state are starting to employ is indeed a marketing arm to our corporation. And with this particular role, of course, the ever-present Mrs. Hazel Baker is providing the communication side of our corporation with this recommendation and proposal. She now will be charged as our director or marketing coordinator and specialist. And so with our emphasis on becoming not only more transparent, but also sharing our brand and building upon our brand, such emphasis and specialty will come with this role and the responsibilities.
So specifically, how would it be different from what it is today?
Right now, Mrs. Hazel Baker is charged with, as for example, this morning, as communication specialist, sharing with our community such emergency notifications, as well as also sharing with our community happenings and any and all things pertinent that we would want our community to be informed of. With this particular role and with the addition of the marketing piece, she now is going to be charged with formulating marketing plans, formulating action plans as to how best to move our message, to move our strategic goal of a better communication with our, not only the community, but also stakeholders.
Were we previously paying somebody to formulate a marketing plan?
No, sir.
Wasn't there? I was
well,
thinking there was a group that was being used.
There is indeed through a charitable donation from Reed Hospital, we do have, and the entire county has and shares the same vendor for our website management, or at least website funding. And beyond that particular vendor and beyond the nature of the website, we've never had, at least not since I've been here in this role, a marketing arm dedicated solely to marketing corporation. Unless there's others that.
So
can be
one thing I just want to point out, the previous board prior to when you and Mr. Mops came on, one thing that we had identified as needing help is our marketing, our communications, as you've stated, we need help with all of that. We need a better plan. We need we need to be more intentional. We need to be more targeted. As a member of the marketing working group, I know that I've seen that her job is, Mrs. Hazel Baker's job has been blossoming, so to speak. We are asking for more. We are needing more. And personally, I have a communications degree. We have actually been quite fortunate to have retained her at the pay that she has had over the last few years. So just so you know, that is part of the equation as well.
And I understood that, we've charged, I think, both Dr. Wright and Mrs. Bolzer for looking at all our positions, administrative and as well as paraprofessionals and educators. And I believe this is one that has been on the books for some time, is needing an adjustment. not only in duties, but in compensation. I believe we have expectations of director, board, cabinet, but of management type positions and administrative authority, and I think the adjustment kind of falls in line with that, was my understanding.
Not only this particular role and position, but also there's been conversations as we have assessed and just tried to delve deep into our fact finding of several positions to always make sure that we're able to retain and recruit and stay within market of particular positions. Mr. Trustee Zaleski, you posed a great question. Per statute, as I understand, there's only so much money that's earmarked and allocated toward marketing. And
a buck a student, if I remember correctly.
And so for us, roughly $4,500 corporation wide. And so this also provides us an opportunity in extending the job description of Mrs. Hazelbaker to really do some dynamic things. And I'm sorry, Mrs. Bozer.
Well, the only thing I would add to that as well is some of the key differentials would be promotion of school, strategic planning for marketing, meaning marketing initiatives, STEAM, for example. That's a new initiative that we just undertook, and that's something that certainly needs to be marketed for it to be successful. And if we're looking at capturing enrollment of our students and increasing the enrollment numbers within our student population here, that's certainly a strategic item that needs to be marketed. And I think that those are some of the components that we're falling behind on right now. I will say, in walking through, I'm amazed at some of the offerings that our high school has. Truly amazed, and especially with the career in tech. And I'm thinking, let's ring that bell as loud as we can. And so those are a few of the initiatives that I think we need to make sure that we are showing that we have here, and really promoting that. So those are a few of the key components I know that we were thinking of.
And I just have a couple questions. So I guess I'm wondering if this position was communications and it took this much time, and now is communications and marketing, and how do we put a whole new realm into the same amount of time? That's my first question. And my second one is, how did we come up with the amount of increase, like $16 or $6 more per hour, approximately 16? Like, is that comparable for?
So it's often a balance of trying to do comparisons throughout the state, or within the region, but also within what we have already locally established as well. So this is in combination of trying to take all of those and balance that, while also looking at potentially the other additional times that it would take for, say, example of the assistant director of facilities. And that is certainly considered as are all administrative positions, as far as what it takes for the level of experience needed to be able to adequately provide the services of the job description, educational background in addition to, but so those are certainly all considered, and also studies that are taken from around the state from other comparisons. And like Mrs. Wolpe also mentioned, I will say I often use the NCC as a reference just because of the size and the demographics that we have, and also the need to adequately, I think, market our successes and offerings here uniquely in comparison to other, especially county schools. I hope that answered.
That answered one part.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I appreciated that.
Yes.
Appreciate all the work that you've gone into looking at, comps to make sure we're staying current, because that is something that we have talked about. But I guess the other part of my question was just the time.
Oh.
How does the time now expand with the same amount of time, but more duties, I guess?
Well, this is an exempt position, so it would not be subject to overtime. And so I think much like other positions that you see, it's stay on the job until you get it done, in comparison to paying an overtime rate. So it would be an exempt position that would, if here in the length of the evening, it's thank you, the job needed to be completed in order to do so.
Which speaks, I mean, to trustees
It
asking this
does.
question, because currently, there is indeed overtime compensation that is awarded in projects.
If that were to happen, it would be paid by overtime, where it would also, based off the budget, it would hinder. So if there wasn't overtime, it would be expected to be flexed off. So say somebody works this evening for the board meeting, that would then, because it wasn't as a part of the budget, and if we were trying to maintain that overtime, that would be, okay, flex that the next day, which would then reduce the amount of hours to put towards the expanded job description.
Flex means adjusting the work day schedule,
Yes.
hours. So 12 hours today and 4 hours tomorrow.
Great
Okay.
math.
But there's never a good day for that 4 hours.
No, there's not,
No.
especially if it snows. For whatever it is, combining the communication and marketing, I think in-house, we do a really nice job of as well as can be in regards to the communication with in-house. I think the most important thing right now is the marketing aspect of it. As you, Ms. Bolzer, stated, and the wonderful things that are going on, the opportunities that we have here, the success stories that we've got going on, we hear about them. But we're really not aware of them until it's brought to our attention. And if we, the people who are involved with it, or the decision making of it, aren't really aware of it, I think it's so important that we market this. I mean, we've got STEAM now. Statewide, nationally, there's going to be this greater emphasis on getting back to focusing on vocational education instead of college ready or college education, to do that. And if we can vanguard that and market that right now, it would be a boon for us with attracting more students from around the area to be here. We've got so much to offer.
And I think that that's something that's throughout the discussion, it kept saying, we've got to market this thing, we've got to get that out there, and it has to be so much more than just social media. We can't rely just on social media for our marketing. And I think it needs to be an intentional strategic marketing plan, and that is certainly a center stone to the addition or the increase of duty.
As I look at the job description, there's already some marketing listed in there. So this is an expansion of what that
It
is.
is, and
compensating her because she's already doing a lot of the marketing. Right. So it's just compensating her for what she's doing and expanding that marketing.
In comparison to what some of the other schools. And that's actually why I switched over off of my agenda ready, was to see if the expanded job description is the one that was posted. I'm not sure if that's the one.
I don't think it's posted.
That was posted yet or not. So,
but you wouldn't want to post it until we.
Correct. That's why I was racing over there to see.
Mr. Cross.
I think one point that we haven't talked about, although I did see it was in the presentation, is the concept of branding. We Are Richmond started here. Now, I'm not begrudging its expanded use in the city and the venues where it's being used, but I don't know where Mr. Stevens got his attire tonight, but I've on occasion gone through the aisles of big box stores and seen Richmond logos that we haven't really gone that minimal extra step to protect, and I think there's value in that.
Yes.
And I think that's something that could be not a primary focus, but it's something we could certainly charge this position to take a look at, and I'd be happy to help. I mean, it's overlapping issues.
Even consistency, I think, in the approach in which, whether it be stationery or logos or a collective theme for athletic apparel to, I think that those are branding systems that you see, to Mr. Cross's point, from a lot of school corporations now, where I think I've seen different R's throughout ours and different, logos. And I think that those, a lot of school corporations now are focusing on what that brand looks like because it's also the message that carries for your school corporation.
Oh, and then as you mentioned, it provides, and as Attorney Cross referenced, exclusivity, which,
Correct.
as we know in the marketing world, it's one of those, it's for our television audience that I know Trustee Moore used to say the millions that are watching. In short, with such emphasis, with such intentional focus, we will clearly be able to, and patrons, community members will be able to clearly recognize the difference between the exclusive, true RCSR and others that may be trying to mimic. But that cadence and uniformity is, again, speaking really directly to you all strategic goals that were established and presented as well. So there's a lot of opportunity with this role.
Any other dialogue? And thank you, Mr. Zaleski, for getting us started on that one. I appreciate it. Okay, so we have a motion by Mr. Weber, a second by Mr. Walton, and all those in favor say aye, please.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Motion passes 6-1. All right, so next we have 5.07. That's right.
President Stoltz, trustees, I come before you with action item 5.07, the conflict of interest statements. As we have indeed welcomed 2 new trustees to our Board of Governance, as well as others throughout the corporation. Before you is the conflict of interest statements as presented for approval. And again, just for clarification for those millions that are indeed watching, the conflict of interest statements, you simply highlight as a Board of Governance multitude of entities and or personnel that that we are either affiliated with and or related to. And so all of our Board of Governance submits conflict of interest statements along with other pertinent personnel throughout our offices.
And I would only add, if you have one that needs to be reported, please just let us know and we'll make sure that gets on the next board.
Do we have a motion to approve the conflict of interest statements?
Madam President, I move to approve 5.07, the additional 22-23 conflict of interest statement.
All right. Do we have a second? Okay, so we have any questions or comments on that?
Do we fill these out every year or the ones that have?
They're
to
an
file?
annually
Okay,
declaration.
so this is a new year.
So those of us who need to do that, Kim, are you
It'll
the
be
person?
the next meet, this was just a catch-up
Yes.
to get us all together. So at our next business meeting in February, we'll have to do these again
Okay.
and everybody else's. So we do it every February
Okay. Thank you.
or March, whatever month, it's February or March, but yes.
These are just to
soon.
make sure that
Yes.
we added to the ones that we already had on file and then the annual.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so we have a motion by Mr. Stevens, a second by Mr. Walton. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay. So we are now entertaining a motion to close the Board of School Trustees meeting and convene as the Board of Finance. Do I have a motion for that?
I move that we close the scheduled Board of Trustees meeting and initiate the Board of Finance meeting this time.
Have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all those, well, any questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor of closing the Board of Trustees meeting and convening as the Board of Finance, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. So we have that passing 6-0. Thank you. Okay, Kieran Scalf, do you have?
No, you still have to do another motion.
I'm sorry.
One more.
So I would like to entertain a motion to elect the school board president as well as the school board secretary as the president and secretary of the Board of Finance. Do we have that motion?
So moved.
Okay, Mr. Walton, thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Walton, a second by Mr. Zaleski, and all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The motion passes 6-0. Mrs. Scuff.
Okay, good evening again. Tonight we are going to make this as quick and painless as possible. However, I do understand some of it is a little bit tedious, so bear with me. If you have questions, we can stop kind of with each slide and we'll do those. I did receive some questions from the board and I will try to address those throughout the presentation. If I miss anything, just let me know and then we will proceed. So before we get started with the finance report, we'll go over the investment report. We do have 3 investment accounts to our money markets at JP Morgan Chase, one of which is designated strictly to food services. And that is just for my record keeping and sanity in order to keep that straight. And then the other is a general money market account. The food services account made $1,468.91. The general money market made $1,831.88. The primary investment pool that we utilize is Trust Indiana. It is a local government investment pool, and it is located, it's housed in Indianapolis, and those funds totaled $79,833.07. What I will tell you is some of those funds are our rainy day funds. Some of those funds are our construction bond funds. While bond funds are in flux between the project getting paid and the period of time in which we get the funds, I do invest those in Trust Indiana. Those funds have to be directly put back into the projects on the list for the bonds. So we track those separately and you can see that at the bottom of the investment summary. The operations fund interest is $52,071. The construction fund is $31,062.86. So that helps offset costs if they come in a little high or if there are contingencies that we weren't aware of. And that's how we utilize that. So any questions on the investment report? Okay. I will say it looks better than last year. Last year was a little rough on the interest side. So about September it started picking up. So hopefully we'll continue with that throughout this year. All right, so the finance report for 2022 is, we'll go in a review of all of the funds and then we'll kind of go a little bit deeper. The education fund ended with a positive balance of $95,000. The debt service fund, positive balance, adding to the fund of $358,000. What I will tell you is this is just due to the timing of payments and the tax structure. So we have a couple of payments due first thing in January. I have to have cash to fund those. And so that is what happens with that. The operations fund added $1,076,000 to its balance. What I will say is primarily that is transportation funds. We were adding almost $1 million each year in transportation. The one note is that will change this year because of our contract with student transit changing. We do expect to have to spend about 400 of those million on those increased costs. That was approved back in the fall, and then we will, and that's primarily just the change in market needs. So we've already discussed that in the fall. We can discuss that more again if we need to later. But that's what we'll expect for this year, is that will probably decrease. Rainy day funds, so the $249,000 that we're showing going down is actually just an interfund loan to the textbook fund. We do expect that to come back in June of 2023, unless for some reason textbook funds are low. And then I'll talk to you about that in May or June. The one thing to know is it is an adoption year for Believe Science. So we'll be talking textbook adoption in the future on that. And that will always change that transfer amount because you don't get the funds until later. All right, utilities and insurance. So this is a breakdown, 5-year trend of our actual expenses. One thing I will note, and Mr. Cross can attest to this because I think we talked about it about 5 times this year. Our natural gas, I actually locked in pricing for, it was about a 10-month period, right before the market got volatile, and then it went sky high, but I had locked in. And so where you would normally see in other agencies that didn't lock in a dramatic increase in that gas pricing, we did not have that here at RCS. The one thing that I will note, it is so volatile right now, I am unable to lock in at the present moment. So I was able to lock in our transport costs, and those are, I think, about 3 cents per decatherm, but I am unable to lock in our actual gas at present. I am watching those every week. I talk with the rep at Constellation, who is the company that we use to assist with that, and touch base with him to make sure that we're still on track. I will say that as long as the issue, and I know this is going to be like world politics, but as long as the issue in Ukraine is happening, we are likely to see that market be some problems for us as far as the lock-in piece goes. So, but I'm always watching it just so that you know.
Did you touch on quick water and insurance?
Yes.
Both significantly lower.
Water is a change to the billing timing.
Okay.
So I was kind of going to get to that. The billing timing changed about October, November. So it's like kind of a half a month behind, and it's not caught up yet. What I will say is what happened at the high school, I don't know yet what that's gonna look like. We got the bill, it's not higher, so either somebody was just really nice and fixed it. I tried to call them already, and they were like, we don't show anything. I'm like, okay, good. So I'm watching that, but I do, I will say that our per gallon amount, it has increased just a little bit. I will also say that over the past year and a half, Glenn, we've kind of changed from just normal faucets to the timed faucets, and that is probably saving us some water as well as the bottle fillers that have auto stops. So your drinking fountains aren't just running, they're stopping as soon as there's not a sensor going off. So that's probably contributing a little bit to that savings, but also the billing timing. Sanitation, you'll see that's going up. That continues to go up. We don't get any control over that. The sanitation district at the city handles that. So we are at the mercy of what that billing structure is. Just a note to the electric, there is a quarterly ECA that we receive. I do watch those closely, and I do talk to our P&L if those are out of whack. I will say that I meet with them at least twice a year to go over the structure of our billing to make sure that we are in line with where we need to be from the commercial side of things and the local government side. So every once in a while we'll kind of clean some things up or move things around on those meters to make sure that we're still getting our best bang for the buck. And they have been really good to work with us on that. So just on insurance, that is down because of 2 factors. One, the COVID credit was applied last spring. So insurance companies offered a substantial credit for the time we were closed, both in work comp and property casualty, as well as auto. So all of those credits were received in May of 22, which is why you'll see the change in 22 versus 21. The one note in 23, I did get the preliminary premium billings, which are November and May, and we will see about a $75,000 to $100,000 increase. Just the difference in that credit, as well as work comp mods. So if you're familiar with work comp, that will change. We're going to do some increased education in that front to make sure that we can start knocking that back down. But I will say that's generally what we'll expect in May. We are going through a work comp audit right now, actually. They're living in our office a couple days a week. And we do everything we can to make sure all of that is in line. So that's kind of where I expect to be in May of this year, just for your information. Okay, so salary analysis of education and operations. I feel like it is easiest to compare them together still because it takes everybody to make the team, right? So you will see that our salary totals for both funds run at the 24.8 mark. Of those, teachers are 15.1, and substitute teachers this year were at 519. So the total to teachers and subs is 15.6, which is about 63% of the total salaries. And then all other staff salaries are about 9.2, and that's about 37%. You will see that's an increase over last year. However, what I have to let you know, the DOE changed the structure. So a number of certified staff had to be pulled out of what is called the teacher number to where that is like super clean in the reporting, and they aren't reported any longer as teacher salaries. So your counselors and some of your special service staff had to be pulled out. Our librarians, I actually get to keep in it because they teach class every day with students and for over 50% of their day. So that is the one caveat of the whole statute that we hold tight here on. So just so you know, that's kind of a difference year over year into why that 3% is a little more dramatic than maybe what it really would be when we think about staffing. All right, so what's coming up this year? Chart of accounts. They changed salaries again. They changed them last year, but they changed them back this year, and they added a whole lot more. So they gave us a whole bunch of subcategories for teachers, substitutes, administrators, part-time staff, full-time staff. You get to name your number, and we get to do it. So my staff, we've been working, gosh, nearly 20 hours a day, and I'm not kidding, for the last couple of weeks, just trying to get this done, trying to get everything moved over for the new year so that we can post some payrolls. I will say that to say that it has been monumental is just very small and minute in the reality of what has taken on this particular change, because they have added so many things. Before, it was like in groups, it was easy, no big deal. We are literally almost having to change every person in the district. So it has been quite a task. And once we get done with the setup, then we'll get with HR, make sure everybody knows the same stuff, and then we'll talk to buildings. So it's going to be a process for the next month or so. And then it's going to be an even longer process as we all have to learn about 50 new numbers. And for those of us that have them in our head, there's not going to be any longer, hey, can you tell me what number that is? Probably not for a long time. But it's been interesting. So benefits also changed. They basically changed everything except medical insurance. Dental changes, FICA changes. Perf and turf got to stay the same by some miracle, but pretty much everything else changed. So, and then we had to add all these extra numbers onto them. So that's also creating some of the challenge. The other thing is maintenance of buildings. Formerly, it had been in the 400 object code. Last year, they made a change to the 700 object code midway through the year. So you will see some changes to cash flow that may look a little different. I've tried to already make those on the projection side so that you're already seeing what it's going to be. But we may have some kind of cleanup in there because I did notice a substantial number of old numbers were being used that we're not going to be able to use this year. The other thing is the insurance claim at RHS. So we'll talk about that a little bit more in just a minute. The 22 budget order. So as we closed that out, the circuit breaker really did come in where they thought it would, which was unfortunate. And as we get the 23 budget order, it only, I will say, looks worse. So there's a couple of factors on that I think that's a bit off. And so we'll talk about that in just a second as well. So as we look at the new tax rates for 2023, you'll see that it goes down. And this is why I think the circuit breaker estimate is wrong. We grew by $100 million in assessed value. There is no way that I can grow $2.4 million in circuit breaker when I grow $100 million in AV and my tax rate didn't increase. So I will just say, I do not agree with the Department of Local Government's estimates this year. So I think we're going to probably fall back into the 3.2, 3.5 area where we were this year. I hope that I'm right on that, and I hope that they aren't. But I don't expect a $5.4 million circuit breaker this year. That will be, like, we're talking Indianapolis problems, if we hit that.
Did another entity increase their debt rate significantly?
No. Okay, no. Tax rates don't, and all AV is up. So, there's a little bit there that, the city took out a very small bond, but it was very, very small, and one was falling off. So I can't see where anybody else has kind of dictated that kind of change. I'm still doing more research, and we have a new auditor who I will meet with tomorrow. But that's kind of where we're at right now. Once I get the abstract, after April 1st, I'll be able to give you more information on that. So, a couple of notes, you'll see the appropriations. The operations appropriation, just so you know, does include bus replacement, capital projects, and transportation. So, as well as some of the administrative areas of central office that used to be in the general fund. And that's why the 15% transfer is allowable, because those were in the general fund. And then just a note, the growth quotient this year was about 2.5%. So that is another reason why we got to see the levy increase a bit, and the appropriations increase a little bit in the operations fund. So the 2023 tax rate for RCS is 74.78 cents. And you can see the breakdown between debt service and operations right there. Any questions on that?
I was thinking the legislature had allowed for a levy increase for transportation specific. Was there a reason we've not?
I was informed by the board that they were not interested in taking that 3% option at this time. Well, I'm sorry, it's not 3%. It would have equated to 3 cents of addition. So I was just informed we weren't going that way. The one thing I will note is that the DLGF had not at the time determined if you were allowed to ask before the expenses were incurred or if you had to wait until the expenses were incurred. We will not see the increase until 2023's year. So it was a little bit of a maybe as far as whether we would be offered or awarded that difference. However, we did not go after it. I would recommend that we go next year and we try if it's offered again. Okay. Personal opinion, because transportation will increase as long as gas is going up and parts are going up and supply and demand are the problem. And
New contract last year.
Yeah, so 3 cents on the tax base isn't a ton. I would say that it's something we need to think about as we move into next year. All right, so some fund assumptions going into this year. You'll see debt service. Those are our actual payments to be made. The unreimbursed textbook amount is $215,160. That is for any shortfall in the collections of textbook for free and reduced students. So the state actually funds a portion of that and allows us to collect the difference in the debt service fund through the levy. So that is what this is. The one thing to note, I'm watching for spring settlement because right now it's possible we might need an additional appropriation in order to hit that 215 if the settlement comes in good. What I will say is when settlements are low and cash is low, I don't take that full amount and I will reduce it by whatever that need is. So I may not take the full amount if we can't. I just always watch that. So that's just kind of an FYI. They did not appropriate enough money to take that full 215 unless we get more revenue. So that's why I'm watching it. An additional appropriation is a lot simpler than it used to be. So that is something we can consider once we see May's money come through in June. Okay, so the education fund, classroom and curriculum is the primary use of it, as well as transfers to the operation fund. We do that on a monthly basis. And then it is the primary source of salaries and benefits for teachers, curriculum, and classroom support personnel. The one thing I'll know, I'm gonna throw a few statistics out to you, and I also wanna show you something on a website while we're here, because when we can brag, we need to brag, right? So if I can get, Alex, if I can get to the web, please. Sorry. Thank you. So of our general fund budget, we are about 67%-ish is our certified staff part of our budget just for salaries, not including benefits. So that's something that we should be proud of. And it's not something everybody can say. So when we look at the DOE calculation, we're hovering at about 57%. What I will say is when we have to remove those counselors, it's going to change a little bit. And we do watch that when we add staff. We need to make sure that that's still in line because we need to hit that 45%. I believe this is the last year before we need to start looking at waivers. If we would ever get to the point we hit under 45, hopefully we will not get there. But that is something that we track frequently. So if you're ever interested and have nothing else to do, a great place to get information on us is the MView site, and you can search us. And this is as much for our public as it is our board members, because this has a lot of information on it about a lot of things. The one thing I will say is it's dated. It's dated to 2020. However, it is some good info. So I'm going to head over to the finance side of things. This kind of tells you how much we spend per student in 2020. You will see that that is more than the basic grant that is provided by the state. So we have Title I dollars, Title II, Title III, Title IV. We have a number of federal grants that we get, state grants that all go into this, as well as the IDEA monies that we receive. So you'll see that the average right now, I think, is about $8,000 per student in the basic grant. So we do have monies that are spent over that. The other thing that you can look at our total expenditures for the corporation. This is updated, I believe, like once a year, and it'll probably be updated soon since the Form 9s will be due this month, and they'll do that, but I hope it'll probably just be for 21 since they're so behind. The one thing I do want to take note is this right here, because a lot of people can't say this. So when you look at how much we spend on instruction, straight to the classroom, you will see that the 54.9 plus the 25 equals 79.9%. This used to be called the 65% solution if you were here a long time ago. It's also called dollars to the classroom. So it's something that I just really wanted to point out to you guys because it's super important that we can say that most of our money goes to instruction. We try very hard to make every dollar count and every dollar go straight into that room. So I just wanted you guys to see this. You can spread the word. It's something to be proud of. Even when it's a hard day, we do really great things. So,
or we can market it.
Huh?
Or it's part of the marketing.
Correct. Market. So you can also see what's kind of included in some other stuff. There's a lot of good information on here. You can see how much we get in state and local funds versus federal. So that's just kind of for your reference. So if you have any questions on that, definitely poke around, take a look. It has some really great stuff in it. All right, so we'll go back. Thank you, Alex. All right, so as we move on to the projections for 2023, these are where I'm thinking that will be. What I will tell you is there's a couple things about projections. One, they're always fluid. Two, they're a best estimate. Three, they change every single day. So as we look ahead, I'll just tell you kind of some of my baselines on what I do and why I place things where I place them. And then I'll let you know that I change them every time a decision is made by you. I change them every time that we know about a state decision that will change that. I watch legislation super carefully. Sometimes I will play with these and create different scenarios so that I know how it affects, so that Dr. Wright and I can have conversations with legislators, sometimes so I can push you to have conversations with legislators, because it's super important that we always stay up on where we're going and what we're going to be doing. So basically, the state basic grant is based, as you can see down at the bottom, on a reduction of about 9 kids at ADM. I will say that this is close. We have count day next week, so we will find out more. I hope that it's only 9. This is positive, like, hope. It's usually a little more than that because of midterm graduates, but we're gonna hope for 9 or less. And then I've got September reducing by 11. I will say that is a very hopeful number. It has been a long time since we've only lost 11 in September. We did bump 1 year, but we haven't plateaued yet. So the goal is to bump again with some changes to marketing and programming and all the things that we offer. If we broadcast a little more, the goal is to get kids back that used to be here, to get kids that have never been here to walk through our doors and take a look at the great things that we do. And maybe even to draw some kids from other places that might be neighbors. So that's the goal. That's where we want to land, but I do have to be realistic. So my realistic is that we're probably going to lose a little, but all of us can work together to make that reduce as much as possible. So that's how your revenue plays out. There is a worksheet that's already available through the DOE to business officers, so I can kind of move with that. That's where those numbers come from so that I can get actuals. That is updated in June each year with each budget. So just so you know, I'm not making that up off my head. The thing is, you can do that formula if you want to, it's super fun. But it is there, so that's where the numbers come from. The other revenue usually comes from reimbursements to salary for areas that, like maybe there was a grant that they said they'll pay for a sub or they'll pay for this. That's kind of where that comes from. You'll notice in November there's a good chunk of money that comes in that is for summer school. It is also for transfer tuition from our neighbors who use our career center. And then we sometimes will get some in the spring if you get new students in the career center just for the spring semester. So you'll see that March bump. That's usually what that is as well. So that's our revenue. The expenditures are more where the projecting comes in, because the revenue is really pretty set for about 6 months. So your expenditures, I will say that your salary and your benefits are pretty close to zero-based to the degree possible. So I have this based on last year's expenses plus the incremental raises less the amount that we saved in attrition. Okay, so that's pretty much zero-based. I change that every time a decision is made. And then like tonight, we'll change it because a decision was made that impacts that difference. So, but the salary and benefits, I try to stick as close to where it will probably land as possible. The other thing that does is it allows us to talk about this, like how decisions will affect it. It helps Dr. Wright know what he can do, what he can't do, what he wants to do, what we want to talk about. Are there things that we need to think about this summer moving into like bargaining season, or you know, how if you guys are asking what can we do to get to like $15 an hour for everybody, this is where we know how that impacts. You do get this on a monthly basis. You will notice as the months progress, you'll go from projected to actuals as each thing happens. So you will see that in the consent every month. So the purchase services and staff development, there is not a significant amount of change year over year at this point in this area. If we know there are things that will significantly impact that, we'll talk about it, you'll know about it because you'll be approving things. Generally, for the most part, for the last good number of years while I've been here, we've had to do most of the professional development through grant funding. So that's how we fund most of that. The one thing I will say is purchase services can be anything that's student services. So you have your CIS, your Centerstone, you have your social services, you have all of that happen in that line. And then tuition and travel. This is one of the things that I always hope it's right, but one court order can impact that by like mega money. So in today's world, we get a number of appointments to residential facilities or special educational facilities, and that would come out of this line through transfer tuition. And so there are times when we don't really get a choice in that, and we just have to pay it because we are the district of residence. So the probation department is pretty good about letting me know when that is coming, but I don't always know it in January because they may make a decision in March or April, and there's nothing we can do about it. We just have to make it work. So that's just kind of where the big flux comes in there. The other thing that this line takes care of is our career education students that participate in cosmetology, fire and rescue, the College Now program at IU. All of those are funded through this line as well. So when you see fluctuations, it's probably that more kids are participating, means a good thing, or we've had a change to a transfer tuition placement that was beyond our control. And I will say those are increasing across the state. We are not the only one. With that, everybody is seeing it, just the movement. So I had a call from a school I have never talked to before, which is kind of funny because they're nowhere near us. They're like, hey, are you gonna charge me for this kid? Well, I can claim them, so no. I'll take their ADM, you don't get a bill. Okay, good. So those conversations happen a lot right now between business managers behind the scenes, but that's what that means. Just supplies, so and other, this is where the buildings, I try really hard to allow them the autonomy to utilize their funds as they need to for classroom supplies or things throughout their building that may come up. So that's where this is. I try really hard to keep it pretty similar, but I do bump it from the previous year because I never know where it's gonna land. And so I just provide the cushion a little bit in that area. And then classroom equipment and technology in the education fund, it's very rare that you're gonna pay for one item at $5,000 or more because it has to be capitalized and most of those have to come out of operations. So that's why you don't see it unless there's some weird thing that we have that I don't know about right now. So that's where we look. I will say these are extremely conservative because that's my job. I'm supposed to be conservative so that you guys know what kind of cash position we need to be in. So we're gonna start the year with $1,473,000. That's a done deal. Books are closed. We're good. Right now, with projections being where they are, it looks to land at $1,245,000. That is eating cash balance of about $225,000. What I will tell you is I'm conservative. And so as we make decisions, we will watch that closely. The one thing is that it's not really dramatically conservative. So it's something we just always need to keep in mind. And you saw that we put $95,000 to the cash balance. That's not very much in a $37 million budget. So we're talking under 1%. So probably under half 1%. Like, so we're not talking money that's cash going to the budget. So we aren't in a position that we're growing that cash balance quite yet in an excessive way. Rainy day, this is just super quick. You do have to direct all rainy day funds. So right now there's just a repayment of textbook funds in June. We'll talk about if we need to do it again in June when the time comes. The one thing that I want to note is we did write appropriation in the budget to order buses. I'm only doing that because right now the lead time on buses is about 14 months. So we weren't able to do that this year because we didn't have the appropriation. We didn't know that that was going to be a problem. And so we did get our buses in December for last year. However, that is absolutely not going to happen this year without some miracle to the supply chain. So what we're seeing is that I'm going to order buses this year through bus replacement. And then we probably aren't going to get them before the end of the year, but I'm also going to order in December the buses for 24. And that's just simply so that we can get them, maybe order in November. I'm kind of watching our bus guy definitely keeps me in the loop. So maybe, October if things are looking even worse, but so that we can get them on order in order to get them in 2024. So that's just a change to our normal process. It's simply so that we can keep up and get those in a timely manner because we do want to keep replacing our buses on the 12-year cycle. Okay, operations. Moving over there. So this is the breakdown of how the operations fund is broken down.
The buses, I mean, I'd prefer not to get too far out of whack. I mean,
Well, we're not getting out of whack, and we wouldn't spend it out of rainy day. It's for a purchase order.
and
So we're gonna take it out of. We're gonna
I
take
mean,
it
if
out
we
of
get more than
budget.
14 months, if you're saying 16 months, then I think we need to kind of, I don't want to be buying buses 2 years in advance.
You're not purchase. So I'm gonna tell you the
Put it in
process.
order.
We're putting them on an order. We're not gonna write the check until they come.
Okay.
So what happens is I need to do a purchase order. I can't do a purchase order without appropriation. So I
you
need
take it out of
you
rainy
to
day.
appropriate so I can do the purchase order. Then when the check comes, it comes out of the real account and bus replacement because I move the purchase order to it.
Okay.
So it's not a shell game, but it's a shell game as
And
far
then-
as just getting them ordered.
And then the other thing on rainy day, are we still waiting on a policy to replenish rainy day?
Yes. So the board can create a financial planning policy or a financial policy which states that your expectations are that we put so much to rainy day every year, or we expect a balance of this in the rainy day fund at minimum, and then we would balance the budget accordingly. So
We've
that
not
is,
adjusted rainy day in my entire time on the board, I'm pretty sure.
yeah, it's been a while. We used to sweep the fund. We called it sweeping. We used to sweep the funds from the general fund over to rainy day, and we just haven't done that for cash flow purposes. So we can do that. We don't have a policy to do that right now. We had a policy at one time, and then it wasn't really a policy every year. You would just say, let's sweep it, and in a meeting, and we'd sweep it. It just sets the education fund back at 0 every year. The one thing to note on that, you are doing interfund loans every single year. So that's fine either way. We just have to decide which way we want to do it. The one thing that it will do is you no longer run a cash balance in the education fund. Everything goes to rainy day if you sweep. In the education fund only. You can sweep some funds from operations. You cannot sweep from debt funds. Okay, so you can do anything but debt. Can go to rainy day as far as your taxing funds. So, but yes, we can do that.
As far as like school corporations go, what is a normal percent to have in rainy day?
So it depends. I'm going to be honest. It depends on the corporation.
Sure.
The DLGF recommends that you have between 8 to 10%. There is some qualifiers. Depends on how you feel about it. It can be 8 to 10% per fund. It can be 8 to 10% corporation wide. I think from the sake of just general budgeting, the DLGF will say 8 to 10% district wide total funds. I personally know of some schools that want 20%, and that's what they budget to, and that's a lot of money. They do it. They're also growing districts, so it's a little bit different. But I do know schools that do that. So it really is whatever your comfort level is. I do know your minimum, you want at least 1 quarter's worth of payroll in the bank at all times in case you don't get your basic grant funds, which they have done one time. They did not give it for a month. So that's just kind of a note to kind of keep in the back of your head.
And we're well under that recommendation, correct?
Yeah. Not well under, but with operations we're not, but we are when you talk about education and rainy day. We are about half that. So okay. Any other questions on that? All right, so the operations fund, the district non-curricular operational costs are those things that are that transfer. This is the appropriation amount. This is not how much we'll spend, most likely. You can see that we transferred 5.2 this year. So the estimation is about 5.3. The one note, this does include utilities and insurance, and that can actually be pulled out of that, and it is pulled out for a certain portion of it because the capital fund actually has a threshold in it built into that growth factor. So a lot of detail you don't care about when it comes to that kind of level, but just to note that those numbers are included in those appropriations, but we could pull them out of that we don't include them in the transfer until we hit that threshold. So the capital projects for maintenance and technology, we have a rough budget of $13.5 million. I will note that this is where the circuit breaker comes into effect because it gets hit the hardest. So if we truly have a $5 million loss, then we're looking more like $8 million. I will say that we haven't spent 8 million in a while, in that area. However, the reason why it's a little higher this year is because, the board has already allocated 2 bid projects, above the amount that was in the bond, taken if we need it. So it's only an if we need it, and then we know that we have flooring that we're gonna do, in some of the areas of the high school, and depending on the cost of that, will depend on if that 1.2 is fully used or not. So, I just wanna note, I did need to make appropriations, high enough that that will cover that. As well as we finish up that HVAC project at the high school, we're gonna have some costs to that we knew were gonna come out of CPF. So, that's a little higher than usual. It usually is about 10-ish. And I knew that 1.2 plus a little bit of that HVAC stuff might come into play this year while those projects are being completed. The other really nice thing about it, we'll talk about insurance right now, is the fact that we need to do the repairs and we need the appropriation to do it, because even though we're gonna get the funds, I can't appropriate those funds until we do an additional appropriation. And so, having this high enough to cover that, even though we're gonna get the revenue for it, is nice because it helps us delay that additional appropriation until we need to, if we need to. So, that's just kind of a food for thought as we look at this. And we'll talk about that in just a second a little bit more. Transportation services, we do have allocated 3.1 strictly to the contract. And then the bus monitors, right now, most of those monitors are paid for through the contract, so there's not a lot of cost to that, but I always budget it just in case. Because we never know if something's gonna happen and we require some extras on some special service need buses. So, when we have those items, I just make sure that we're covered with appropriation, even if we might not use it. And then bus replacement, this is high. Not knowing what the cost for buses is gonna be this year. I will say last year, they went up about 20 grand a bus. So, I bumped it this year because I knew that we needed to. And, I do not know what that market, it was hovering about the same amount. It was looking like about 135, 140 per bus. It was 130 last year. So I hope that holds for a little bit longer, but I just don't know because they don't always keep your pricing. If there are significant changes in market, there's a qualifier. Now they'll keep you close, but it's not always just right. So the one note is the total of 22,984,200 does include some carryover from purchase orders that have not been paid yet from 22. So that's just a normal, because you gotta use, I always track that for cash purposes so that we know that those are gonna actually be cash that's used this year, even though the appropriation carries from last year. So that's where, if you look at the budget order versus this information, that difference is purchase order carryover. So as we look at projections, these are a little bit higher. My property tax, I will play with that when I get the abstract. I don't change it too much because this year we did collect about 98%. So I felt pretty good about that of the amount that we could collect after the circuit breaker. And then I did adjust the LOIT and the FIT and the license excise tax, as well as the CVET, to match what we will get from the DLGF. And then I left the transfer from education alone for now, knowing that we haven't made significant changes to impact that just yet. And then, like I said, we already talked about how I do salaries and benefits, and the one thing that I did is I did bump the maintenance line because of that insurance claim that we're gonna have to repair all of that information, or that area. And then also because of the projects that will likely close between now and the end of the year, like we had talked about earlier. The one note, in January, we did receive $300,000 as an advance from Liberty Mutual for the claim. So right now, our expenses are looking at about $325,000 today. Now, there are a lot of things we aren't done with yet that'll happen over the summer, but today we're looking there. It changes every hour almost, I would say, to a degree. But that's where we are at this moment. So any questions on that? And you will see that right now we have $8,735,000 in the fund. That is significant cash. I will say that it does provide for us to do some projects if we need to. And this is about, just kind of as a historical reference, this is about the cash balance line where we start talking about, okay, do we need to do something? And what will that be? The one thing to note is if we need the 1.2, that will take it down to 6.5. And so it's just everybody, as we're having conversations, it's important to make sure that we're keeping that in mind. And the other note is that this money is not all just CPF. It's also transportation. So we just need to make sure that we are aware of that it's not just, and I will say a significant amount of it came from transportation, probably about 2.8 million originally. And then we were putting about $1 million to the balance each year. So like I said, that will change, but I just need you to kind of have those numbers in your head as we talk about things. You can use it however you want. There's no rules now on separating, but business officer in me says we just need to be aware of all of those differentiated areas that we have to use this fund for. All right, any questions on that as we move ahead? Okay, so a couple of reports for you to know that you get throughout the year that you can track this with. The Form 9, you did approve it tonight. The formal reports come out usually March-ish, unless they're moving really fast. So I do provide you with those copies. Once they're in its final form, they're easier to read than the reports that we have to transmit through the submittal process. The other thing to keep watch on your monthly financials in that consent agenda, it's super important that you know where you are so that when you're making decisions, you can do that with the most information possible. And then Gateway, so the transparency portal and Gateway provides information to our taxpayers. The one thing that I am required to do is to go over the fiscal indicator page, and we are going to do that super quickly. And we are going to just hit it super quick because I personally don't love this page. So if you are unfamiliar with fiscal indicators, the DUAB board, which is the board that if your corporation is in trouble, they are keeping watch on that, and they will there's a bunch of reports and notifications and things like that that we have to go over and watch for and see. I have had to go to the DUAB board once when we went at 5.01% on our transfers for the Operation to Education Fund. That was simply because of an increase to our utility bill, and there was nothing I could do about it. So you better believe I fought for it, and they all sat and go, "We understand, but we still have to do it." And so it was a lot of paperwork for nothing, but that is something important that we have to keep in mind, that they are checking our responsibility levels and our responsiveness. So this information is a little bit more up to date. It has a lot of information on it. It's got membership counts. It's got fund balances. You'll note the ones that are under the line are the ones where you're spending cash balance. And we've already talked about all those through the beginning of the presentation. This is the annual deficit versus surplus. We also talked about that. Then the balances of percentages of expenditures, just a lot of stuff. I will say that I'm impressed that has been updated because last year it was 2 years old. So they are keeping better track on that. But this is just mainly for our taxpayers because I am required by law to inform them that this website exists. So that's there. All right, so does anybody have any questions? All right, thank you.
Thank
Thank you, Mrs. Scalf. At this time, we will entertain a motion to accept the report as presented. You have a second?
Second.
Alright, so any questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor of accepting the report as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay,
Madam President,
yes.
I move that we close the Board of Finance meeting and reconvene the Board of Trustees meeting.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. We have questions or comments from anyone? I would just like to say thank you, Mrs. Scalf, for your work on all of that. Appreciate that. Okay, so we have a motion by Mr. Stevens, a second by Mr. Walton. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Okay, we are now moving on to 7.01, policy review is where we're at.
I would like to make a motion that we approve 7.01 policy 6230, gifts, grants, and bequests, and 7.02 policy 6250, naming guidelines for school and facilities.
Okay, we have a second.
Second.
Okay, any questions or comments? Okay, you have the motion made by Mr. Walton, seconded by Mr. Stevens. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Okay. Moving on.
I would like to make a motion that we move 7.03 policy 4464 early graduation and 7.04 policy 4900 meal charges to second reading.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Questions or comments? Okay, motion made by Mr. Walton, seconded by Mr. Stevens. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion passes. All right. We now have board reports and discussion. So 8.01 is educational planning working group. Anything to report there?
And President Stoltz, as well as trustees, I simply wanted to inform you that following our January 11th, 2023 school board meeting, where board leadership was established, I began to consider which working groups you all would most excel in, and I indeed recommend that for our education working group, Mrs. Brunton, Mr. Mops, along with Mr. Weber, serve on that particular group. As far as facilities, President Stoltz, Trustee Walton, along with Trustee Weber, I think it would make for a great facilities working group. As far as finance, Trustee Brunton, Trustee Stevens, along with Trustee Zaleski, I recommend we make for a strong working group. And then finally, the marketing working group, President Stoltz, Trustee Walton, along with Trustee Zaleski, again, is who I recommend for the marketing working group.
Okay.
If indeed you all have presence.
All right. Any questions or comments? Okay. And do we need to have a motion to accept those? I don't believe we do. Okay. Thank you for your recommendations and your support. All right, education planning working group. Any discussion?
We have a meeting Monday.
Okay. Facilities. I think it would be great to hear from
Yeah.
Mr. Slifer in regards to
We've not met because I guess he's been kind of busy, but
Just a skosh.
yeah, excuses, okay. But no, obviously we've had a little fiasco going over at the high school, and to your point, it'd be great if you could just give us a snippet of what's going on. Are we still on track to get the kids back in the building and things of that nature?
Sure, be glad to. Good evening, everyone. The update, for the high school tragedy with the water, 90,000 gallons, by the way, if you guys forgot. is going very well. I want to extend the gratitude to all of our local contractors, our in-house team that has come together and is making this possible. But furthermore, the second floor of the 19 classrooms was affected. Was all the flooring has been laid, code base is on, furniture's in the room. We did a punch list up, so to speak, on walkthrough today for the 19 classrooms, and there was a small list. We got to cut a couple of doors off to where the height difference is, but it's all being handled and taken care of. So it's progressively making a difference every time you walk up there. So if you walk up there now, there's staff actually up there putting the desk and stuff in the appropriate place for them. So we're excited. It's really looking good up there. Got the classroom side done, and when we deal with the corridor here in the summertime, it will really make it look fantastic up there. So we're excited about moving on. I know the teachers are and staff is ready to get back in their rooms to organize it and get going. The current plan is if we don't have any hiccups in the morning, we're going to allow the teachers and staff to get up in there at 2 o'clock tomorrow to start organizing their rooms to get ready for Monday morning's students.
So
we
Mr.
still-
Slifer, you said the corridors will not be done?
That's correct.
So what kind of surface do we have on the corridors right now?
Well, we have the carpet on the surface now, but what's underlying of it is tile on it. So when we pull the carpet, we're also going to be pulling tile up. So we don't want to, that's just too much work to try to cram in a smaller period of time. So we've got the preliminary clearance to move forward on that, and we're going to be getting prices and stuff and get it organized for some summer work to get the corridor taken care of.
I was just trying to get a picture for the kids and staff so they know what to expect when they walk in the building.
Yes, yeah, it's still the beautiful blue carpet up there that you guys are used to seeing.
But the rooms are done.
Rooms are done. They're looking spiffy. I think everybody's going to be pleased.
That's a technical term.
Okay, cosmetically they look better.
It's great. It's great. Showing some personality there. So.
And just to piggyback on what Mr. Slifer has referenced, and we indeed are going to feature this in the public address that will go out tomorrow. As Mr. Slifer mentioned, we definitely were presented with a lot of opportunities with the 90,000 gallons plus of water that was unfortunately found in the school. And when students return, indeed, they will notice several changes to our beloved schoolhouse. However, with what has indeed been afforded with the hard work of Mr. Slifer, Mrs. Scalf, and what Attorney Cross has always kept a watchful eye on our current affairs and endeavors with this opportunity. One thing's for sure is that the number one goal was to return our students, along with our faculty and staff, to a very safe and efficient schoolhouse. We'll not only be doing that, but when all is said and done, definitely by this time next year, once time, as Mr. Slifer mentioned, affords itself, we will indeed be able to repair and add renovations so as to provide our students, faculty, staff, and our community with a 21st century schoolhouse with the same historical or nostalgia that we all appreciated with that facility. So we're definitely, as Mr. Slifer mentioned, grateful for all that has come to aid as well as service, and most importantly, very proud of our students as well as faculty and staff. We pivoted on a dime to meet the educational and academic needs and interest for what was pulled off, especially in our corporation. When we say that this was the first time in our corporation that we exercised synchronous live instruction, the fear that so many had And ultimately, as even has been referenced at the podium tonight, the response has been, again, nothing short of what our city's always been about, resiliency. So,
Alright. Anything to report from the finance working group? And marketing working group? John, are you interested in speaking to that?
I guess we did meet, so I did bring I don't have my papers with me, but, let's see, we went over stats. There was some discussion of logos. I think as the elementary schools request, that they have their mascots. I think there was been an effort to try to uniform, i.e. like the same person drew all the mascots, is how I would describe it. Right now, that is not the case whatsoever. And so, but to provide them some opportunity to have some artwork and some things that are, would be, you could identify, okay, that's a Richmond mascot. I think on the other side there was also, and I think there's still some discussion as far as letterhead and stuff. I would, I guess, fall in the category of, I think the corporate letterhead should just be used across the corporation. I don't think we need to have, Charles using the Charger on their letterhead. I think it's an RCS thing. And so I think that discussion needs to be fleshed out, because I think there is some thought that the schools want to have that individuality on their mailers and whatnot. I guess I look at this as one corporation and would prefer to not go down all that rabbit hole. I'd like to provide them some artwork, some things they can use for their spirit weeks, their promotional things. But as far as corporation business, I think it is RCS. And so I think that's some discussion that needs to continue to happen. I'm not saying that my thought is correct, but I think there's both sides to that coin. I think there continues to be some website work. Numbers on most social media, I think, are trending mostly where we'd like. I think we'd still like to see a more consistent drumbeat of output, and I think maybe some of the changes we had today, where we have continual constant communication. I think that'll happen, but I don't know. Did I miss anything?
I can look up my notes.
Nicole has the notes.
Impressive though. We also talked about the 8th grade pathways. We're at the high school. They're going to be bringing in 8th graders and kind of highlighting some of the different pathways that are available at the high school. Sorry, that was kind of so the 8th graders are coming to the high school. The pathways are at the high school, not at the 8th grade. So, and there's all kinds. I mean, it was just fun to get to go through them, actually. We've got the firefighters, the marketing pathway, automotive, cosmetology, drafting, biomed, machine tooling, radio and TV, engineering, EMT, arts. I just was proud that we were able to provide all of these different pathways for kids that are interested in those specific career paths. So, and Mrs. Hazel Baker is the one who's marketing all of that and putting all of the graphics behind that. And so that was something else we talked about. And then in addition to that, just the newsletters, we're continuing to task her with putting those out. Staff newsletters as well as community newsletters. Those are new initiatives. We've got the videos and RCS updates with Dr. Wright that have been coming out. Mostly talking about the pipes at this point, but yeah. And then board briefs with Bridget, and that is something that she would love to have our help with. Pete, thanks for doing that last time. And so she's wanting to kind of get a list together who's going to be helping with that each week. So if you're willing to do that, then just say yes when she asks you, basically. All right, and then we also just went over analytics as far as our school board meetings and TikTok and who's getting on LinkedIn and all of that fun stuff. And then we've got several things coming up just that we were talking about as far as how to promote and how to celebrate. Test has their 100th birthday celebration. So we're going to be celebrating that in May, and they have a student committee that's put together, and kind of exciting to see just some of the things that are going on as far as that goes. I don't know, Dawn, would that be something that you've been involved in at all, or is that a Bridget question?
That is Bridget. I know I was involved with the
Okay.
dentist, and I think we've learned a lot from that experience
Okay.
when they celebrated their 100th birthday. But I believe that Mrs. Hazelbaker has been instrumental in that work.
Oh, yeah, feel free to jump in.
Yeah, we do have a student committee. We've met twice. We actually are calling some former principals to come in for a dunk tank.
Oh, fun.
So we have some, we're looking at different carnival ideas too. So things change in the great big,
Did
we know that?
Mr. Knox,
I will not do another I've done that. I
He
will
won't
not-
do the dunk thing, but maybe the pie to the face.
I'll do that. I will not do it.
So yeah, the kids are coming up with different themes as far as maybe what what was the school like back in the 1920s.
Okay.
You know, different kind of the specials the teachers are looking at.
I mean, I
how
can
to
tell
lead
about
that.
the 1980s.
I know. So they're looking at just and playing maybe different types of music. We do have some old video also of the Morton High School football team practicing in the football field, so you can see Tess in the background.
How fun.
You know, with all that. So some photos as well. Jody Marcy, the librarian at Tess, is also on that committee. Kate Belongia, Mrs. Thomas, Jamie Thomas, and Miss Gerard. And then we've had 4 students, and looking to see what we can do to implement that and going off their ideas. So the kids are putting together a business plan to see if they can recruit some money, again, for t-shirts. And the students are doing some artwork also to create the logo for their party, for their birthday party.
Awesome. Well, thank you for the little preview of that. That was, like I said, one of many things that we talked about. So just, yep. That was really
Did we salvage any of the 90,000 gallons of water for the dunk tank? Just thinking ahead.
Too soon. No, too soon. It's a tad bit too soon. But I will say, just to add to the marketing working group, and as we have had conversation as to transparency, as we have had conversation with expanded communication, we indeed are going to continue as we have to move in along the channels that we currently have, and of course with the marketing
May 9th.
piece.
So Margaret, May 9th.
May 9th.
May 9th?
Yes.
Okay. But I think one of the things that it would behoove us to do is to hear from our community as to exactly what they would like to receive in the form of communication. That's one of the things that you'll hear across the country, across our state, locally. You'll hear patrons reference more communication, more communication. I think if we're intentional, as we have been with even our assessments of our systems and systemic structure, I think if we add intentionality to what exactly we're communicating to our public, I think it will be to our benefit. And so that's one of the things that working with Mrs. Hazelbaker, we may indeed exercise a general survey. Of course, these next few months we'll be hitting the road, if you will, visiting corporation or schools throughout our corporation, just to have unity conversations and dialogue. And so with that marketing working group, we'll expand upon some opportunities, I assume.
Thank you. Okay, so 8.05, other discussion.
Nicole, I've got a few things, just with the legislative update. Not that I'm sure most of us are aware, it is, I don't even know how to describe what's going on over at the State House, but it is not education friendly. And so you've probably seen many of the bills. Our own Senator Rotz has been very busy writing his own bills, in fact. And so I would encourage you, without going into details here, I mean, most of that ISBA does a great job with their updates. Be sure to read all those things. I know they have one to try to get there the 30th. They're looking for people to testify on the partisan election issue. That was killed last session, but they brought that back. I don't know if I can or not. And then there's a few dates. So next Friday is the IU East Legislative Forum. So if people can attend that, that's at 8 a.m. Senator Rotz and Representative Barrett, I think, will both be there. And then the Chamber Legislative Breakfast is February 11th. I think some of us have signed up to attend that.
That's
So
February 10th.
okay,
Isn't
it's in early February, so double check your calendars. But just
February 10th.
It's just really interesting. There's a lot of stuff that just makes no sense whatsoever, and so it's important that you, I think, advocate for students and staff and teachers and
Public education.
Public education. It's a lot more than just the basic stuff of taking money from public education and putting it towards choice. I mean, that's still a huge priority, but they've just it's. I'm sure many of these bills will not. I certainly hope will not go through, but it's kind of scary times. So please read those ISBA legislative updates and stay informed. And if you have any questions, I'm happy. But I don't want to have a big debate here tonight. So, but just keep an eye out. And if you can get the IUs, especially the 27th, that'd be great.
And Mr. Weber, I think it'd be appropriate to also reference that you are indeed our new legal and legislative liaison. And so we thank you for your time and patience with that.
Good time to be one, I guess.
No doubt.
All right, any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to preview of upcoming meetings and events.
President Stoll's trustees, our next upcoming meeting will be Wednesday, February 22nd of this year. Again, that will be our next scheduled board meeting. And on that day, we will continue to highlight the amazing and wonderful things occurring here in RCS, as well as address areas of improvement and continue to exercise humility, self-service, and resilience.
Okay. And next we have an adjournment and bell ringer.
President Stoltz, trustees, I ask that prior to our bell ringer, we just acknowledge a gentleman that has exercised patience and indeed has and will continue to exercise such in his new role during the approval of the Human Resources report and addendum. This evening, you all approved Mr. Darren Corder into the position of operational support. Mr. Corder has been in our corporation for many years, serving selflessly, and in this new role, he is going to have an opportunity to continue to exercise his skill sets from school to school and from building to building. And so, Mr. Corder, we definitely appreciate and thank you for your continued service, and congratulations on the new appointment. With that being said, and thank you for your patience, Mr. Corder, as well.
Less than the marathon.
Yes, no doubt, no doubt. With that being said, Mrs. Bridget Hazelbaker, I ask that she come back to our podium and to our conversation to share bell ringing
Mr.
information.
Moff, I have to take a video of you because I'm doing it for the board briefs. So just sit there and look cute.
I've taken,
That'll be a stretch.
I've taken 2 videos of you during this meeting.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. All right, perfect.
She keeps texting me.
I know. I've been asking her, and she's been going. No, it's too shaky. So I don't know if you've seen her trying to videotape him as well. All right, I just want to congratulate again our spelling bee winners. First place was Sophia Garcia from Fairview, 4th grade student. Second place was Adeline Venus from Westview. She also was one of our Christmas card winners. So I don't remember her or not. Third place was a tie. It was Keen Pickering from Charles and Riley Bragg from Crestdale. And then also our Richmond High School bowling team has advanced to semi-state as a team, and as we have an individual, Nate Farrell. He'll be going, they're doing it at the Royal Pen in Indianapolis this Saturday. And then just another upcoming thing, Monday, our students come back to the high school. That's really big, yes. And then also Monday, tryouts will begin for our dentist test and Hibbert students if they want to try out for Beauty and the Beast Junior. So that show will be here at McGuire Hall. Tryouts are at Dennis though. And then, we also, Birds of Five is also hosting a, open house at Star, and that's gonna be, for play dates. So those will be, at Star on the 30th as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Stevens.
I think it's only appropriate, even though she started out with mentioning him, welcoming Mr. Stacy Mops on his first official meeting as a member of the board, so.
Glad we could have a marathon.
Yes, welcome, Mr. Mops. Anything else for the good of the cause? All right, we are now adjourned.
Adjourned.